Chapter 1022. The blood race from both sides suffered many casualties in the war, but those who survived were all elites. Lan Qiyu came forward and reorganized them. No blood race dared to object, and they all obeyed her orders. To the blood race, being able to serve under the Saint Seed was something they dreamed of. The territory of Qian Lu Blessed Land expanded again, and the range of protection naturally increased. After Lan Qiyu took over, the first thing she announced was that from today onwards, the blood race under her command were not to harm the lives of humans in any way. Although Yu Lingfeng had announced this before, the effect was completely different. When Yu Lingfeng announced this matter, although the blood breeds agreed verbally, they didn't take it seriously and didn't take it seriously. Which blood race in this world did not consume blood? Some blood race even made up their minds to secretly consume blood. Anyway, as long as they were not caught on the spot, it would be fine. But this order came from the mouth of a Saint Seed, so no blood race dared to disobey. Every now and then, pregnant human women were sent to Qian Lu Blessed Land to settle down. Lan Qiyu was in charge of this before. Now that her cultivation had increased greatly, it was easier for her to handle this. She also selected a few Gu human females and trained them as helpers. In this way, the pregnant mothers of the human race would be well taken care of. After they gave birth to the blood fetus, they would be sent to the nearby villages to settle down. Lu Yi did not need to worry about these trivial matters anymore. He only needed to cultivate. Time flew by and another month passed. In the backyard of Qian Lu Blessed Land, in Lu Ye's bedroom, waves of qi swept through his body, and the surging spirit energy in his body was obviously pure. True Lake 8th Order. Thinking back to when he cultivated in the nameless sealed world with the help of the Earth Vein, he advanced from True Lake 5th Order to 7th Order in 2 months. But it had been more than 3 months since he came to the blood refining world, and his cultivation had only advanced by 1 level. Of course, in these 3 months, he only used 2 months to cultivate. In the first month, he had been restoring his original cultivation, so it did not count. His cultivation did not improve quickly, at least compared to before, it was slow. However, compared to other human cultivators, this cultivation efficiency was still terrifying. This was mainly due to the talent tree. With the help of the talent tree, Lu Yi could quickly absorb the energy of spirit stones and spirit pills for his own use. This was something that no other human cultivator could compare to. The spirit stones and spirit pills that he carried with him were almost used up. The only resources he had left for cultivation were some blood crystals. There were quite a few of them, but not too many either. The source of the blood crystals was Lan Qiyue's external expansion. During this month, she led the vampires in Thousand Flow Blessed Land to attack the nearby vampires' territories. Now, the territory under Thousand Flow Blessed Land's jurisdiction was twice as large as it was a month ago. All the humans under their jurisdiction were protected. Lan Qiyue's cultivation progress was extremely fast. Almost every time she returned from a battle, Lu Yi could feel that her cultivation had improved. Dao Shisan's cultivation had also improved. Of course, he was only slowly recovering his original cultivation. The current Dao 13 was already at the 9th Order True Lake realm. He was only 1 step away from the Spirit Sea realm. Dao 13's recovery was slower, but it couldn't be helped. After all, he couldn't absorb the energy of the blood crystals without restraint like Lu Yi. What he had been doing the most recently was eating nonstop. He ate the flesh and blood of the demonic beasts in this world. With the Spirit Sea realm physique, his appetite was naturally huge. He would eat 3 to 5 demonic beasts almost every day. Fortunately, there were specialized vampires in charge of capturing monster beasts for him, so Lu Yi didn't have to worry about anything. It would take some time. In the blink of an eye, another 2 months had passed. It had been more than 5 months since Lu Yi came to the blood refining world. Dao 13's cultivation had finally fully recovered. Lu Yi knew that it was time to leave. Over the past 5 months, he had been thinking about the purpose of the 9 continents Tianji sending him to this world, but he couldn't figure it out. The only thing he was sure of was that it had something to do with the humans of this world. Looking at the various sealed worlds that Lu Yi had experienced, everything he did was closely related to the fate and future of the humans in those sealed worlds. It was the same for the myriad beast realm, the soaring dragon realm, and the peerless continent. He once wondered if the 9 continents wanted him to save the humans of the blood-refining world. But if that was the case, then the 9 continents had overestimated him. In the end, he was only a true lake realm cultivator. Even with Tao 13 as his helper, he wouldn't be able to do much in a big world like the blood-refining world. Even with Lan Qiue, it wouldn't be enough. He couldn't bear the heavy responsibility of saving the humans of the blood-refining world unless he had the ability to destroy all the vampires in this world. Since the 9 continents didn't want him to save the humans of the blood-refining world, then why did the 9 continents send him here? Lu Yi had to find the answer, so he had to leave Thousand Flow's blessed land. He wouldn't be able to find any clues if he stayed here. The reason why he waited until today was to wait for Tao 13 to recover his cultivation. Tao 13 was the greatest helper the 9 continents had given him. Only when Tao 13 fully recovered his cultivation could he proceed with the next step of his plan. As for Lan Qiue, if he kept her here, she would be able to protect more humans. Therefore, he couldn't bring Lan Qiue away. Otherwise, it would be much safer to bring a saint seed of the vampires around the blood-refining world. With a plan in mind, Lu Yi waited silently. Since he was going to leave, he naturally had to bid farewell to Lan Qiue. One day later, Lan Qiue, who had been fighting outside, returned. The first thing she did was to go to Lu Ye's bedroom to report the situation of the battle. She told Lu Yi how many bloodbreeds had died in this trip. Her excitement was beyond words. The dead vampires naturally included her subordinates. However, she was the same as Lu Yi. She didn't feel sorry for the deaths of her subordinates. To her, every dead vampire was an additional blood crystal. Of course, in order to preserve the strength of her subordinates, she couldn't kill too many vampires. Therefore, every time she went on an expedition, she would control the number of vampires' casualties. When the time was right, she would activate her Saint Seed bloodline and turn the tide. Senior apprentice brother, these are the blood crystals we obtained during this trip. There are a few hundred of them. Lan Qiue said as she handed a storage bag to Lu Yi. She naturally knew that Lu Yi could use the blood crystals to cultivate. However, she didn't know why Lu Yi had such a strange ability and never asked. You can keep them for yourself. There's no need to give them to me. Lu Yi declined. It's too easy for me to cultivate. I don't need the blood crystals. Therefore, it's more appropriate for senior apprentice brother to use these things. It was indeed easy for her to cultivate. The vampires she killed during the expedition were all turned into nutrients for her growth. Moreover, she could enter the blood river any time to improve herself. Then I'll take them. Lu Yi took the storage bag. He didn't have many cultivation resources left. Although a few hundred blood crystals weren't much, they could replenish some. After a pause, he said, "Junior apprentice sister, I have something to tell you." Lan Qiue was startled. Then her expression changed. She quickly stood up. "I'm not listening. Senior apprentice brother, don't say it." "I haven't said what it is." Lu Yi was speechless. "I'm not listening." Lan Qiue was a little annoyed. She stomped her foot and turned into a blood light that shot into the sky. In a flash, she disappeared. She was very smart. It was obvious that she realized something. Looking at the direction she left, Lu Yi was speechless. At the side, Dao Shisan was eating a large piece of beast meat. His mouth was full of oil and his stomach was bulging. He was carefree. Suddenly, a scream came from the front yard. It was unknown which vampires were unlucky enough to meet Lan Qiue, who was in a bad mood. They were killed by her. The next day, Lu Yi was meditating and cultivating when he heard footsteps. He opened his eyes and saw that it was Lan Qiue. Lu Yi smiled at her and gestured for her to sit down. Lan Qiue turned her head and stood there without saying a word. After a while, she said, "Senior apprentice brother, are you leaving?" Lu Yi nodded slightly. "Yes." Lan Qiue turned to look at him. There was a hint of pleading in her eyes. "Can you not leave? If you leave, I'll be the only one here. There are some things that I have to go out and take a look." "Then go." Lan Qiue was annoyed. "Senior apprentice brother, if you leave today, I'll kill all the humans in my territory tomorrow. I'll go and kill those pregnant mothers right now. Lu Yi laughed. Don't say things out of anger. Lan Qiue glared at him. I can do it. Maybe you can do it, but you're a human after all. You were once one of those pregnant mothers. If you really do it, you'll suffer in the future. So what? Lan Qiue looked at him stubbornly. However, she only looked at Lu Yi for 3 breaths before averting her gaze. Come and sit down. Lu Yi waved his hand. Lan Qiue moved and sat in front of him. After a while, she said, Senior apprentice brother, take me with you. I'm a holy seed. I can protect you by your side. Lu Yi sighed. If you leave, Qianlu blessed land will be in chaos. Those humans, what does their life and death have to do with me? Lan Qiue suddenly became agitated. I was supposed to die. Senior apprentice brother saved me, taught me cultivation, and brought me to the blood pool. If it weren't for senior apprentice brother, there would be no Lan Qiue in this world. Senior apprentice brother, don't forget that I was originally an ordinary human. I don't want to be a holy seed, nor do I want to be a blessed land. I don't ask for anything else. I just want to follow senior apprentice brother. You can just treat me as a servant girl. Lu Yi was silent. He suddenly realized that he had taken things for granted. Before becoming a holy seed, Lan Qiue was just a human girl who was bullied by the blood breeds. It was just that her current identity as a holy seed made Lu Yi forget the Lan Qiue of the past. If I let the holy seed be a servant girl for me, my e-finger will rise. Lu Yi said slowly. If it's only 5, then come with me. Lan Qiue looked at Lu Yi in surprise. Really? Lu Yi nodded. Of course. But if we all leave, what will happen to the humans in the blessed land? I'll try my best to make arrangements. Perhaps there was no way to maintain the current situation in the blessed land for too long, but he could only do his best. Chapter 1023. Lan Qiue smiled. Then I won't go. She was still making a fuss about wanting to go with him. Why didn't she go after agreeing to it? I really won't go. Lan Qiue was still smiling. Senior apprentice brother is right. I was once one of those pregnant mothers and suffered a lot. Now that I have the ability to change some things, I can't sit back and do nothing. I'll stay here and continue to expand my territory. I'll protect as many humans as I can. Lu Yi was slightly enlightened. Only then did he realize something. Lan Qiue didn't have to go with Bai Ji. She just wanted him to declare that he was willing to take her with him. Once this was satisfied, it didn't matter whether she went with him or not. But senior apprentice brother, wait for me for 3 days. No, 5 days. You can leave after 5 days. Lan Qiue said. She was also here. Okay. Lu Yi nodded. He didn't ask what she wanted to do. Lan Qiue left quickly. Lu Yi sensed that she had left Ganlu blessed land. He didn't know where she was going. 5 days passed quickly. Lan Qiue returned as promised. Looking at her travel-worn appearance, it was obvious that she had rushed a long way. Senior apprentice brother. Lan Qiue took out something from her chest and opened it in front of Lu Yi. This is a rough map of this world. Lu Yi's eyes lit up. He had thought of getting a map of this world, but this kind of thing was hard to come by. He had no way to get it. He didn't know where Lan Qiue found it. Wu Bai's trip this time was probably related to this. He lowered his head to look at the map. He saw a block pattern in the shape of a drop. It was similar to the one he saw when he entered this world. Lan Qiue pointed at the top of the map. This is where we are. Senior apprentice brother, when you leave here, remember to go south. Why go south? Lu Yi didn't understand. Lan Qiue pursed her red lips. She hesitated for a moment. Finally, she said, because there's a human force in the south. They have the power to fight against the blood race. Senior apprentice brother, you can only be safe there. Lu Yi's heart was slightly red. Are you sure? Lan Qiue said seriously, I heard about this from the blood breeds more than a month ago. She smiled mischievously, but the blood breeds who told me about this have already been killed by me. She obviously didn't want Lu Yi to know about these things, lest Lu Yi get any ideas. She had long felt that it was impossible for Lu Yi to stay here forever. So when Lu Yi said that he had something to tell her a few days ago, she turned around. She tried to persuade him to stay but to no avail, hence she knew that Lu Yi had left. Since that was the case, there was no need to continue concealing the information about Stewart. At the very least, she could give Lu Yi a clear goal and direction, so that he wouldn't have to run around aimlessly in the blood-refining world. Lu Yi stared at the map in front of him in a daze, his mood surging. This was the best news he had heard since coming to the blood-refining world 5 months ago. He had seen too much of the suffering of the human race during this period of time. He had thought that the humans of the blood realm were living in an abyss of suffering and that this realm was completely ruled by the vampires. Not until then did he realize that there was still a new flame of humanity in the darkness. The 5 months of confusion suddenly disappeared at this moment. "Where is it?" Lu Yi asked. Lan Qiue's slender red finger moved downwards. "Senior brother is heading south, crossing the sky-upholding peak and the royal line. These 2 peaks are the 2 highest pressures in the blood-refining world. You still have to continue heading south." After a while, Lan Qiue's finger pointed to a position on the map. "Spirit Net Sea, that human race power is in the Spirit Gate Sea." Lu Yi's gaze swept past the sky-upholding peak and Jade Pillar Peak before looking at the Spirit Gate Sea. He couldn't help but have a strange feeling. The shape of the entire blood-refining world. Why does it look like something? The thought flashed past, but he didn't think too much about it. The vampires in the south and the humans in the Spirit Gate Sea are at war all year round. Hence, senior brother must be careful when you go there. "I understand." Lu Yi nodded slightly and reached out to pick up the map. He stared at Xiangahai and stretched out his hand slightly. Suddenly, he raised his head and looked at Lan Qiue. "What are you doing?" Lan Qiue had used her finger to make a cut on her Lulu's deer. The cut moved, but the blood didn't flow out. What was strange was that her blood wasn't golden. Lan Qiue stretched out her finger and pulled at the wound. Soon, a round jade the size of a copper coin was taken out. The jade's body was shining with golden light. It was as if it had drunk Lan Qiue's sacred blood. After the round jade was taken out, the flesh on Lan Qiue's arm moved. It healed very quickly. This was the uniqueness of the vampires. They were proficient in all kinds of blood arts. Hence, ordinary flesh wounds were nothing to them. They could recover very quickly. Not to mention, Lan Qiue was a sacred seed. Her recovery ability was even stronger than ordinary vampires. After taking out the round jade, Lan Qiue's aura had obviously weakened by a lot. "I prepared this 2 months ago. I thought that senior brother would be able to stay for a while longer. Now that senior brother is leaving, I can only take it out. This sacred blood jade contains my aura. It can deter some ordinary vampires. However, because it is limited by my cultivation, its deterrence effect on vampires above the Spirit Sea realm is greatly reduced. Senior brother, please use it regularly." As she said this, she handed the sacred blood jade that was nourished by her sacred blood to Lu Yi. Lu Yi only felt that his hand was heavy. Something prepared 2 months ago? Obviously, Lan Qiue had always been mentally prepared that Lu Yi would leave at any time. Otherwise, she would not have prepared such a thing for him. This also showed that Lan Qiue had never planned to leave with him. She knew that Lu Yi was worried about her. Hence, she had to stay and protect the Pando humans in the area under her jurisdiction as a sacred seed. "Senior brother, you must take care of yourself," Lan Qiue finally exhorted. Lu Yi took the lead. 2 hours later, in the sky above Qianlu Blessed Land, Lan Qiue stood in midair and watched Lu Yi leave. Since she had decided to leave, she would not drag it on. There was no water in the world that was not green. He vaguely felt that the sleepiness was something that happened a few months ago. He could find the answer there. Other than Dao Shisan, only Yu Lingfeng followed him on this trip. In an environment like the blood-refining world, there were many inconveniences for the 2 of them to enter the clan alone. Bringing Yu Lingfeng along would be a cover. If they encountered other vampires, they would only subconsciously think that they were Yu Lingfeng's blood slaves. But in reality, who was the slave and who was the master, each person's heart was clear. Lu Yi took out the spirit boat and had Dao Shisan drive it. When they passed by the vicinity of Tsangnan village, Lu Yi thought for a moment and let Dao Shisan take a detour. They stopped outside Songnan village for a moment. Under the perception of his divine telekinesis, the villagers of Songnan village were undoubtedly more smiling than when he first arrived a few months ago. They no longer had that kind of brilliant expression. In the past few months, ever since Zhang Julai in the Bright Moon Cave abode announced that they would no longer consume blood, no more humans were harmed by the vampires. Now, Songnan village only needed to contribute a certain amount of blood within a certain period of time. This was something that couldn't be helped. The blood race had a deep-rooted desire for blood. Not allowing them to drink living blood was already an extreme measure. If they didn't even allow them to drink dead blood, who knew what kind of chaos would ensue? Even Lan Qiue, the sacred seed, did not think of changing this point. The main thing was that it could not be changed. After observing for a moment outside Songnan village, the group set off again. Dao Shisan drove the spirit boat. Its speed was still very fast. In just one day, they were out of Qianlu Blessed Land's jurisdiction. This time, Lu Yi was not in a hurry to go south. After all, the journey was long and there was no point in being anxious. He was currently in the northern region of the blood-refining realm. The Godly Gate Sea was in the southern region of the blood-refining realm. If he wanted to reach the Godly Gate Sea, it was equivalent to crossing over half of the blood-refining realm's territory. Even with Dao Shisan driving the spirit boat, it was not something that could be done in a few days. Lu Yi estimated that this journey would take at least a few months. Moreover, he was not just rushing. Along the way, he would occasionally encounter vampires. He would casually kill them. For the current Lu Yi, the blood crystals of the vampires were the only cultivation resources that he could obtain. Naturally, he would not let them go. Previously, when he was in Qianlu Blessed Land, he wanted to find an earth vein to cultivate. After all, if he could find an earth vein where spiritual energy gathered, his cultivation level would increase rapidly. However, after searching for a long time, he did not find anything. In the end, he came to a helpless conclusion. The blood river was the earth vein of the blood-refining realm. Although it could be found everywhere, it could not be refined at will. It was a pity. 5 days after leaving Qianlu Blessed Land's jurisdiction, the group arrived at another blessed land. Yu Lingfeng took the lead. Lu Yi and Dao Shisan followed closely behind, pretending to be blood slaves. Before they got close to the blessed land, a patrolling vampires stopped them and asked, "Where are you from? What are you doing here?" Yu Lingfeng followed Lu Ye's instructions and said, "We have no home to return to. We are here to seek refuge." The vampires looked at Yu Lingfeng suspiciously. Seeing that he did not seem to be faking it, the vampires said, "Wait here." They turned around and went in to report. After a while, vampires with a higher cultivation level came out to greet them. After exchanging a few words with Yu Lingfeng, they happily let him in. After a while, in the meeting hall of this blessed land, the true Lake Realm vampires with some status gathered together and sat on the left and right sides. The foundation of this blessed land was not bad. It was much stronger than the Qianlu Blessed Land. The one sitting at the head of the table was naturally the Blessed Land's lord. The vampires frequently fought with each other. There were always some defeated vampires who had nowhere to go and could only choose to seek refuge. Therefore, the vampires present did not doubt Yu Lingfeng's words at all. They all thought that he was really here to seek refuge. Moreover, Yu Lingfeng showed that he was a true Lake Realm 8th Order cultivator. They could not underestimate him. If there was one more vampires in the Blessed Land, their foundation would increase. Basically, the vampires here welcomed Yu Lingfeng's arrival. Chapter 1024. However, after a short while, the hall was filled with corpses and blood. Lu Yi sat on the throne of the Blessed Land's lord, playing with the sacred blood jade that Lan Qiue gave him before he left. Yu Lingfeng stood respectfully at the side, trembling. With Lu Yi and Dao Shisan's abilities, it wouldn't be difficult to kill all the bloodlights here, but it definitely wouldn't be this easy. After all, they were all true Lake Stage blood race cultivators. If their lives were in danger, they would definitely put up a fight. However, it was different with the sacred blood jade suppression. When Lu Yi took out the sacred blood jade, All the blood race cultivators present stiffened as if they were struck by lightning. Lu Yi and Dao Shisan attacked violently, slaughtering all the blood race cultivators present. The Blessed Land's Lord was still alive, but he was captured by Dao Shisan and knelt in front of Lu Yi. Lu Yi raised his hand and touched the Blessed Land's forehead, urging him with his spiritual will. After a while, Dao Shisan let go of the other party and Lu Yi put away the holy blood jade. The Blessed Lord of the Blood Clan, who had been planted with the soul control spell, stood up respectfully. Lu Yi gave a few simple instructions before leaving with Dao Shisan and Yu Lingfeng. He didn't kill the Blessed Land's Lord out of mercy, but because he needed him to live on and continue to rule this blessed land. He wanted to provide as much protection as possible for the humans in this blessed land. Along the way, Lu Yi would kill a group of blood race cultivators for blood crystals every time he passed by a blessed land. He would leave the Blessed Land's Lord alive and plant the soul manipulation divine rune. In fact, if possible, Lu Yi would like to plant the soul manipulation divine rune in the minds of blood race cultivators of the divine ocean stage. In the blood refining world, the places where blood race cultivators gathered were divided into 3 levels. The lowest level was the abode, guarded by blood race cultivators of the Cloud River stage. The next level was the grotto heaven, guarded by blood race cultivators of the divine ocean stage. The abode's lord was called the abode's lord, the blessed land's lord was the blessed land's lord, and the grotto heaven's lord was the heavenly venerate. If one could control a heavenly venerate, it would be very effective. It wasn't something a mere blessed land's lord could compare to. However, even with the sacred blood jade in hand, Lu Yi didn't dare to enter a grotto heaven with a blood clan member at the divine sea realm. There were too many variables. A blood clan member at the divine sea realm was not easy to control. He had been lucky to successfully plant the soul control spell in Dao Shisan's divine soul. Dao Shisan had fainted, and Mo Wuji had used the deity vanquishing sword to break Dao Shisan's divine soul defense. Thus, even though Lu Yi knew the benefits of controlling a heavenly venerable level blood tribe member, he didn't act rashly. Continuing south, Lu Yi planted the soul manipulation divine runes in almost every blessed land he passed, and they all received his orders. Xingjin reached the peak of a mountain. The cold wind was biting, penetrating one's bones. As far as the eye could see, clouds and mist were rising, and waves of smoke were faintly discernible, as if they were no longer in the mortal world. Towering Sky Peak was one of the 2 tallest mountain peaks in the blood refining realm. It was marked on the map that Lan Qiue gave to Lu Yi. The other mountain peak was Jade Pillar Peak. It was said that these 2 mountains were of the same height, and if one looked down from the sky, one would see that they were both semicircular in shape, symmetrical on the left and right sides of the blood refining realm. It was really strange. Lu Yi didn't know whether they were of the same height or symmetrical on the left and right sides, and he didn't have the mood to investigate. After all, he couldn't go to Jade Pillar Peak to make a comparison. He was just passing by. It had been almost 2 months since they set off from Gon Lu Blessed Land. According to the map, they had only covered 30% of the journey. In other words, they still had to walk for at least 4 months to reach the Shenkai Sea. The road ahead was really long. They didn't stay here for long. Soon they set off again. They passed towering Sky Peak and entered the vast Cloud Radish Plain. From the map, the Cloud Radish Plain was extremely large, occupying almost half of the blood refining realm's territory. The Shenkai Sea was located in the middle of the Cloud Radish Plain. It was an inland sea. A few days later, in a blessed land where the blood race gathered, many corpses of the blood race were strewn across the hall. Yu Lingfeng silently collected the blood crystals of the dead blood race. Lu Yi sat on the throne of a blessing lord, playing with the sacred blood jade in his hand. The blessing lord knelt in front of him, listening to Lu Ye's instructions and nodding his head repeatedly. They had done this so many times that the 3 of them were familiar with it. Almost every blessed land they went to would have a similar scene. After giving his instructions, Lu Yi got up and was about to leave. Unexpectedly, the blessing lord who had been implanted with the soul manipulation divine rune suddenly said, "Sacred envoy, please wait." He didn't know Lu Ye's background, But when he saw the round jade with the sacred blood seed in Lu Ye's hand, he thought that Lu Ye was a subordinate of a sacred seed, so he subconsciously called him Sacred Envoy. As for why the Sacred Venerable chose a human as his sacred envoy, it wasn't something he needed to consider. What is it? Lu Ye tilted his head and looked at him. The Blood Race member said, Sacred Envoy, may I ask if the Sacred Venerable is willing to subdue more Blessing Lords? Lu Ye narrowed his eyes. What do you mean? The Blood Race member said, It's like this. Not long ago, the Blessing Lord of the Yellow Dome Blessed Land reached the Divine Sea level, so he invited all the Blessing Lords to gather and prepare to hold a blood feast ceremony. When the time comes, many Blessing Lords will come to support. Lu Ye raised his eyebrows. In the past 2 months, he had used the Soul Manipulation Divine Rune to enslave many Blood Race members, but the efficiency was still low. However, this was just something he did along the way, so he didn't demand anything. Now that there was an opportunity for so many Blessing Lords to gather, he could go and join in the fun. The reason that he hadn't rashly gone looking for trouble with an Empyrean-level blood race was because there were far too many uncertainties. Before his cultivation truly stepped into the Divine Sea realm, rashly attacking a Divine Sea realm blood race was far too risky. However, if it was just a blood race member who had just reached the Divine Sea level, then it was completely possible to take him down. Not to mention that many Blessing Lords would come to support him. It could be said that what he gained from participating in this blood-feeding ceremony might be more than what he had gained in the past 2 months. Spending a few days to protect more humans was totally worth it. You were invited? Lu Ye asked. The blood race member said, The one in Remnant Sky Blessed Land has some friendship with me. Very good. Lu Ye nodded in satisfaction. What's your name? The blood race member hurriedly replied, Jinda. Because I have a friendship with the one in Huang Qiong Blessed Land. Therefore, Jinda originally planned to set off today, but he didn't expect Lu Ye to come to him. As a result, almost all of his true Lake Realm subordinates were dead, and he was the only one left. There was nothing to prepare. After a while, Jinda led Lu Ye and the others away. Huang Qiong Blessed Land wasn't too far from here, but it wasn't close either. It was a day's journey. On the second day, the group arrived at Huang Qiong Blessed Land. Looking from afar, Huang Qiong Blessed Land was full of jubilation. Many blood race members were shuttling back and forth in the Blessed Land, setting up all kinds of things for the ceremony. Because it wasn't the day of the ceremony yet, the guests hadn't arrived yet. When Jinda led Lu Ye and the others down, a blood race member who recognized him immediately came up to greet him with a smile. Brother Jinda, why are you here so early? There are still 2 days before the ceremony. Jinda said, Brother, when ascending to the Divine Ocean Realm is a joyous occasion. How can I be late? I also want to see if there's anything I can help with. The master of Huang Qiong Blessed Land was called Wen Yufeng, and he was younger than Jinda. The blood race member smiled. Brother Jinda is considerate. He then reminded, but Brother Jinda should call him Heavenly Venerable. Jinda was startled, and then he laughed. Yes, Heavenly Venerable One. Although they have a friendship, the Divine Ocean Realm and the True Lake Realm have different statuses. It would be inappropriate to call him Brother Wen now. While the 2 blood race members were talking, Lu Ye's gaze fell on the many panic-stricken humans locked up in prison. Without exception, all of them had cultivation, and they were all human girls around 16 or 17 years old. There were quite a few of them, about 300 to 400. It was obvious that Huang Qiong Blessed Land had put in a lot of effort to collect so many young girls with cultivation. These girls should be the food prepared for the blood feast ceremony. Once the ceremony started, the blood race members who came to congratulate Huang Qiong would enjoy them to their heart's content. Lu Ye was secretly glad that Jinda had mentioned it before. Otherwise, he would have missed the ceremony, and these girls would have to face an extremely tragic fate. At the same time, he felt a little sad. What he could see and intervene in was something he could do. In this vast blood refinement realm, how many things could he not see and control? These 2 humans are. The blood race member looked at Lu Ye and Dao Shisan curiously. Dao Shisan, in particular, had a sturdy figure and abundant blood essence, which attracted the blood race's attention the most. Back then, Sun Miaozhu had taken a liking to him. The two blood slaves that he brought as gifts had high cultivations. The blood race member understood and immediately smiled. Brother Jinda is considerate. If Heavenly Venerable knew, he would be happy. Where is Heavenly Venerable? Jinda asked. I will send them to Heavenly Venerable now. He is meditating in his bedroom, preparing for the ceremony in 2 days. The blood race member gestured with his hand. Brother Jinda, follow me. Logically speaking, it was not good to disturb Heavenly Venerable at this time. However, since Jinda wanted to send gifts, he could not stop him. Therefore, he followed the blood race member and headed to the backyard of the blessed land. Soon, they arrived in front of a bedroom. The blood race member went in to report. After getting Wen Yufeng's permission, he came out and said, Heavenly Venerable invites you in. Thank you. Jinda nodded slightly and led Lu Yi and Dao Shisan into the bedroom. They walked in. At first glance, they saw a blood race member sitting cross-legged. It was the master of Huang Qiong Blessed Land, Wen Yufeng. Now that he had reached the Divine Sea Realm, Huang Qiong Blessed Land would also rise and become a Huang Qiong Grotto Heaven. As for whether Huang Qiong Blessed Land could stand firm, it would depend on Wen Yufeng's ability. This was also the reason why he held the blood feast ceremony. He wanted to use this ceremony to win the hearts of the masters of the blessed lands nearby. Otherwise, he would not have spent so much effort to prepare so many high-quality blood feasts. Greetings, Heavenly Venerable. Jinda stepped forward and bowed. Wen Yufeng opened his eyes and said with a smile, Brother Jinda, there is no need to be so polite. You and I have known each other for many years. Although I reached the Divine Sea Realm earlier than you, there will be a day when you will reach the same level. Chapter 1025. Jinda immediately pretended to be touched. I'm moved to tears, Heavenly Master. The past is the past, and the future is the future. If you have any orders in the future, Jinda will obey. He was expressing his stance. Wen Yufeng was very satisfied with his attitude. He glanced at Lu Yi and Dao Shisan behind him. I heard you prepared these for me? Jinda nodded and stepped to the side. These two blood thralls have high cultivation bases. I've carefully selected them. Oh! Wen Yufeng smiled faintly, but he didn't mind. After all, in his opinion, no matter how Jinda chose, he wouldn't be able to find any good food. However, Dao Shisan's abundant blood qi piqued his interest. Since you said so, their cultivation must not be too low. What are their cultivation levels? Jinda said, the Heavenly Master wants to see your cultivations. Why don't you show them? As soon as he finished speaking, Lu Yi and Dao Shisan moved. The pressure of the Divine Sea Realm spread out, and Wen Yufeng's smile froze. In his opinion, the two blood slaves in front of him were at least at the Cloud River Realm. If that was the case, it would be a great gift. However, he didn't expect Dao Shisan to be at the Divine Sea Realm. Moreover, the pressure was so strong that it made his heart palpitate. In an instant, he couldn't even breathe properly. Before he could react, Dao Shisan's divine consciousness rushed out. Wen Yufeng felt as if he had been hit by an invisible sledgehammer. His head jerked back, and a pained expression appeared on his face. At the same time, Lu Yi took out the holy blood jade. Wen Yufeng, who instinctively wanted to resist, was even more frightened. He felt his blood being suppressed, and the power he hurriedly channeled was instantly dispersed. However, when Lan Qiyue gave the holy blood jade to Lu Yi, she told him that due to her limited cultivation, the holy blood jade's power might not be much of a deterrent to blood clan members at the Divine Sea Realm. It seemed that this was indeed the case. The moment the holy blood jade appeared, it did cause a momentary suppression on Wen Yufeng, but he quickly broke free. However, Dao 13 took advantage of this brief moment to step forward and clamp down on Wen Yufeng's mouth to prevent him from screaming. His other hand reached out and grabbed Wen Yufeng's shoulder, lifted him up high, and smashed him onto the ground. With a loud bang, the entire palace shook. Even though Wen Yufeng had reached the Divine Sea Realm, he was still knocked dizzy. This was not the end. Dao Shisan's divine will had been surging all this time. It turned into an invisible force that slammed into Wen Yufeng's divine soul, making him dizzy and his divine soul tremble. Wen Yufeng's body bounced off the ground. Dao 13 was kneeling on top of him, preventing him from moving. Lu Yi quickly stepped forward and placed a finger on Wen Yufeng's forehead, his divine sense surging. A moment later, Lu Yi gave Dao 13 a look of exhaustion. Only then did Dao 13 release Wen Yufeng. Wen Yufeng got up in a sorry state. His figure staggered as he shook his head. It was obvious that he hadn't recovered from the earlier incident. Lu Yi also shook her head gently. It was still a bit difficult. For him, killing Wen Yufeng was easy. Dao 13's cultivation was much higher than Wen Yufeng's. Even 10 Wen Yufengs wouldn't be a match for him. However, enslaving Wen Yufeng with soul manipulation wasn't so easy. The main reason was that Wen Yufeng resisted consciously. Therefore, even with Dao 13's divine will attacking Wen Yufeng, he had succeeded. Lu Yi was even more relieved that Dao 13 had fallen into a coma when he entered the blood-refining realm with him. Moreover, he had the deity vanquishing sword that targeted divine souls. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to plant soul manipulation on Dao 13. Wen Yufeng slowly came back to his senses. He looked at Lu Yi, not knowing how to address him. Wen Yufeng's divine soul had been planted with the soul manipulation divine rune. Naturally, he could feel Lu Ye's absolute control over him. Jin De introduced, "This is Lord's sacred emissary." Wen Yufeng hurriedly bowed. "Greetings, sacred emissary." Lu Yi nodded slightly. At this moment, the Blood Clan member who had led Jin De here hurriedly came over. He asked in surprise, "What happened, Sky Sovereign?" Although the incident just now was brief, there were still fluctuations of battle. This Blood Clan member had sensed the abnormality and came to investigate the situation. Wen Yufeng waved his hand. "It's nothing. You may leave." The Blood Clan member nodded and retreated with some suspicion. "I'll be staying here for the next 2 days. If there are any guests, bring them here," Lu Yi instructed. "Yes. Also, you are not allowed to harm the humans here. As for those human women outside, where did you capture them from? Once this matter is over, send them back." "Yes," Wen Yufeng replied again. The blood-feeding ceremony was extraordinarily lively. Wen Yufeng had already sent out invitations, so guests kept coming as the ceremony approached. Those who came to congratulate him were led to Wen Yufeng's bedroom and left after a while. 2 days later, there were about 30 blessed masters who had arrived. On the day of the ceremony, the guests gradually decreased. Those who should have come had already arrived. Wen Yufeng appeared and enjoyed the festivities with the guests. However, what puzzled the Blood Clan members of the Yellow Dome Blessed Land was that their Sky Sovereign hadn't ordered them to prepare any food. When they asked for instructions, they were even fiercely reprimanded by the Sky Sovereign, telling them not to harm the food without his orders. Although the Blood Clan members of the Yellow Dome Blessed Land didn't know what was going on, they didn't dare to disobey the Sky Sovereign's orders. All the way until the end of the ceremony, the captured blood food was still safe and sound. During the ceremony, Wen Yufeng even announced that in the future, the vampires were not allowed to harm the human race at will, which attracted the approval of many people who came to congratulate him. The Blood Clan members of the Yellow Dome Blessed Land were at a loss. They couldn't understand what was going on at this moment. Lu Yi had already brought Dao Shi-san and Yu Lingfeng thousands of kilometers away. This trip to the blood-feeding ceremony had allowed him to enslave a divine sea realm heavenly venerable and 30 true lake realm guests. The harvest was even greater than the previous 2 months. With his orders, the humans would be able to live in a safe environment in the Blood Clan's territories in the future. But in the end, this was only a temporary solution. In the short term, the Blood Clan's territories would be safe, but no one could guarantee that they would live forever. Once they died, no one would be able to carry out Lu Ye's orders. Moreover, the Blood Clan members under him might not be willing to obey his orders. If they were to act secretly, the guests might not know. They continued south. Recently, Lu Ye's cultivation progress had been very slow, mainly because of the lack of cultivation resources. Although he had collected some blood crystals, they weren't enough for him to break through to the 9th Order True Lake Realm. The journey was relatively smooth. In the blink of an eye, more than 2 months had passed. Almost 70% of the journey south had been completed. Only 30% was left before they reached the Divine Gate Sea. In a Blood Clan-blessed land, Lu Yi, Dao Shisan, and Yu Lingfeng stopped to rest. Along the way, the group would occasionally rest for a while. After all, they were very tired after traveling for such a long time. While they were resting, a voice full of energy suddenly sounded, "Where is the guest of this blessed land?" Lu Yi raised his brows slightly and scanned with his divine sense. He noticed that there was an unfamiliar Blood Clan member in the Blessed Land. This Blood Clan member was a 9th Order True Lake Realm cultivator, the same as the Blessed Land's guest. The Blessed Land's guest hurriedly appeared and greeted him. "I am the Blessed Land's guest. May I ask who Sir is?" The unfamiliar Blood Clan member shouted. "Under the orders of Star Moon Holy Senior, you are ordered to gather the local troops within 3 days and gather at Star Moon Holy Land within 10 days. The Blessed Land's guest immediately replied in fear, "Understood." The unfamiliar Blood Clan member passed down the order and quickly flew away. Lu Yi frowned and signaled to Yu Lingfeng, "Call him over." Yu Lingfeng accepted the order and left. After a short while, Yu Lingfeng led the Blessed Land's guest in. "Sir," the Blessed Land's guest saluted. Lu Yi asked, "Why is Star Moon Holy Land gathering troops?" The Blessed Land's guest explained, "Naturally, it is to send troops to the Divine Gate Sea. Sir, you may not know, but every few years, the Holy Race has a large-scale operation against the Divine Gate Sea's Blue Blood Holy Land. It is almost time, so Star Moon Holy Land is making such a move." Lu Yi frowned. "Blue Blood Holy Land is a human race force in the Divine Gate Sea?" Lu Yi was slightly stunned. This name was a bit of a coincidence. He came from the Blue Blood sect. He didn't expect that there would be a force with the name Blue Blood in the blood refining world. Moreover, it was the only human race force. There was an inexplicable sense of familiarity. "Does Star Moon Holy Land have a saint seed?" Lu Yi asked. In the blood refining world, the Blood Clan's gathering places were generally divided into 3 levels: secluded caves, blessed lands, and heavenly caves. But in fact, above the heavenly caves, there was a transcendent existence, and that was a holy land with a saint seed. If Thousand Flow Blessed Land could continue to grow, it would become a Thousand Flow Holy Land when Lan Qiyu reached the Divine Sea. But looking at the entire blood refining world, there weren't many saint seeds, so there weren't many holy lands. They were still 2 months away from the Divine Gate Sea, but the Star Moon Holy Land had gathered all their troops here. It was clear how big the Blood Clan's movements were. Lu Yi originally wanted to rush to the Divine Gate Sea, but if the Blood Clan was going to attack the Blue Blood Holy Land, it wouldn't be appropriate to rush over. They would definitely encounter many dangers along the way. Although Dao Shisan was in the Divine Sea realm, there were Blood Clan members who were stronger than him in the blood refining world. The reason why Lu Yi hadn't encountered any of them was because he had intentionally avoided the places where the powerful Blood Clan members were stationed. Now that the Blood Clan was gathering their troops, the road ahead was bound to be unstable. If they acted rashly, it was very likely that they would encounter an unrivaled expert. Thinking of this, Lu Yi came up with a plan. He said, "Since Star Moon Holy Land asked you to gather them, do it. Count us in." "Yes," the Blood Clan's Blessed Lord replied. "Instead of rushing over with Dao Shisan, it would be better to move with the Blood Clan's army. That way, they could conceal themselves and wait until they reached the Divine Gate Sea." Chapter 1026. The blood breeds acted very quickly. Within 2 days, all the blood breeds under the jurisdiction of the Blessed Land had gathered in one after another. This wasn't the first time something like this had happened. Every cave had a precedent for how many troops they sent. Generally speaking, each cave would send half of their troops and leave the other half behind. It was the same for the Blessed Lands 1 level above. This was mainly to ensure that there were blood race members guarding their territory. No matter what dangers they encountered, they wouldn't be wiped out in one fell swoop. After that, the blood race members would gather in the Blessed Lands and head to the Star Moon Holy Land. Once they had gathered enough troops, the Star Moon Holy Land would dispatch troops to the Shunkai Sea to attack the human race's Jade Blood Holy Land. 2 days later, Lu Yi brought Dao Shisan and Yu Lingfeng along with a group of Blood Race members and headed towards the Star Moon Holy Land. Aside from the Blessed Land's master, who was at the True Lake Realm, the rest of the Blood Race members were all at the Cloud River Realm. The main reason was that Lu Yi had killed all the True Lake Stage vampires in the Paradise. Now, the only True Lake Stage vampires that Lu Yi had planted with the Soul Control Rune was the True Lake Stage. Many of the Blood Race members were curious about the 2 humans in the group. However, after asking around, they found out that the 2 humans belonged to their Blessed Land's masters. After that, they didn't have any more thoughts. Along the way, they met other groups of Blood Race members from other Blessed Lands who were heading towards the Star Moon Holy Land. When the 2 Blessed Lands masters met, their groups merged together. The group grew bigger by the day. By the time they arrived at the Star Moon Holy Land, there were almost 1,000 of them. The Star Moon Holy Land was located on a spirit mountain and occupied a large area. It was also the only holy land within a few 100,000 miles with a holy seed. The Blessed Land's masters had received the order and a large number of Blood Race members were stationed here. Lu Yi looked up and saw that there were Blood Race members everywhere. There was almost no place to stand from halfway up the mountain to the foot of the mountain. There were at least a few 100,000 of them. His group was considered late and could only find a place to settle down at the foot of the mountain. No Blood Race members came to receive them or tell them what to do next. They just waited. More and more Blood Race members gathered and the army continued to grow stronger. Lu Yi secretly observed and was puzzled. How strong was the Jade Blood Holy Land to be able to stand firm in the face of the blood refinement world? Just the Star Moon Holy Land alone had gathered several 100,000 vampires. From the information he obtained from the vampire's blessed lord, there were a total of 4 vampires of this scale. They were controlled by the 4 holy lands of the vampires. When the time came, they would dispatch troops from all 4 directions to pressure the Jade Blood Holy Land of the Divine Watchtower Sea. The Star Moon Holy Land was mainly responsible for the northern, eastern, and western fronts. There were also vampires of similar strength. In other words, for a war like this, the Blood Race would send out at least 1 million warriors. Among them, there would be countless Blood Race warriors at the Spirit Sea realm. Could the only human force in this world really stop them? In the tent, Lu Yi called over the Soul Control Divine Rune. Lord, you don't know. My lord, you may not know this, but the Godly Watchtower Sea is actually a gigantic pool of blood. It can also be called the Blood Sea. The Jade Blood Holy Land is located on an archipelago in the center of the Godly Watchtower Sea. It is truly easy to defend and difficult to attack. Moreover, they have many fortifications. Often, before our Blood Race army can even get close, we will suffer many casualties. Even if we manage to get close, there are many human experts there. Lu Yi was confused when he heard this. The Jade Blood Holy Land was easy to defend and hard to attack. He could see that as the only human force in the blood refinement world, they were located in the Divine Gate Sea because of the terrain. The Divine Gate Sea was a huge blood pool. If Blood Race members accidentally fell into it, they would lose a layer of skin even if they didn't die. Therefore, in terms of defense, the humans could often achieve twice the result with half the effort. But this wasn't the fundamental reason why the Jade Blood Holy Land could stand firm. Lu Yi couldn't understand. The Blood Race Lord didn't know much about the Jade Blood Holy Land. After all, he hadn't experienced it. This was his first time participating. The Blood Race's encirclement of the Jade Blood Holy Land. Since he couldn't find out more, Lu Yi waved his hand and dismissed the Blood Race Lord. As the night deepened, Lu Yi walked out of the tent and looked around. He saw spots of fire all over the mountains. Under the illumination of the fire, the Blood Race was difficult to calculate. Their figures were distorted, like a group of demons dancing. Suddenly, the crisp sound of a bell rang out. Lu Yi sensed something and turned his head. What he saw made him frown. In that direction, a human woman dressed in a thin veil was strolling over. Under the veil, her graceful body was faintly discernible. She had 2 small bells on her wrists and ankles. The crisp sound of the bells was the sound she made when she walked. She was barefoot. When her skirt fluttered, her white and delicate feet were tempting. She seemed to be walking on the ground, but in fact, she was 3 inches above the ground. The woman's attire was rather unsightly. Logically speaking, such equipment could easily arouse one's lust, but strangely enough, Lu Ye's heart did not waver at all when he saw her. Instead, he could not help but feel a sense of horror. Deep in his mind, a dragon's roar suddenly rang out. Then, a figure blurred in front of him. Dao 13 blocked his view. At this moment, Dao 13 was like a cat with its hair standing on end. His body was slightly hunched, and the aura of the divine sea realm was uncontrollable. Hot air was coming out of his nostrils, and even his eyes became sharp. Lu Yi had asked Dao 13 to conceal his aura so that he wouldn't expose his divine sea realm background. If that happened, it would be difficult to explain to the other blood race members who didn't know. But the appearance of this woman made him feel threatened. That was why he reacted in such a way. A soft sound came from the woman's nostrils. She looked at Dao 13 in surprise. She didn't expect to see a human in the divine sea realm in this place where the blood race army was gathered. What a pity, she murmured again and looked away. No one knew what she was feeling regretful about. At the same time, Lu Yi, who was being protected by Dao 13, was surprised. When he first saw the woman, he thought she was a blood slave brought by a blood race member. There were hundreds of thousands of blood race soldiers gathered here, but not all of them were blood race members. There were still some blood slaves with cultivation. The status of humans in the blood refinement realm was extremely low, but because of the blood seal, some vampires were very willing to subdue some blood slaves for their own use. After all, compared to other vampires, blood slaves were trustworthy and could be commanded at will. When he first came here, he saw some human blood slaves. So, although he was surprised by the woman's outfit, he didn't think much of it. Until a dragon's roar came out of his mind. The dragon's roar came from the activation of the twin dragon sea guard. In other words, the woman had used some undetectable method on his soul to activate the protection of the twin dragon sea guard. Then, Dao 13's instinctive reaction made Lu Yi realize that something was wrong. This woman wanted to harm him. But what was even more strange was that the woman left and didn't continue to attack him. Pushing Dao 13 aside, Lu Yi looked up and saw that the woman continued to walk forward. Wherever she went, all the blood race members stood up and stared at her with infatuation. Their eyes were full of greed and lust. The woman didn't seem to care at all. She just smiled faintly. Lu Yi suddenly realized that the woman wasn't going to attack him. Or rather, she wasn't targeting him. Her mysterious means were targeted at all the blood race members here. He was just affected. Who was she? What was she doing? In that split second, Lu Yi faintly thought of a possibility. Just as this thought came to his mind, he saw the woman standing still and slowly rising into the air. She only stopped when she was 10 feet above the ground. The bells on her wrists and ankles moved without any wind, and the tinkling of the bells could be heard. Although the sound was soft, it was extremely penetrating. In Lu Ye's mind, the dragon's roar came again. Dao 13 lowered his body and growled like a wild beast. Normally, he would only react like this when he was in danger. A soft chuckle rang out. It was as clear and melodious as the sound of a bell, but it brought with it a bone-chilling feeling. The woman formed a seal with her hands and placed them in front of her chest. She said softly, 1,000 pear trees, 10,000 pear trees, bloom. Dots of starlight suddenly flew out from her body. They were as dazzling as the stars. The starlight spread out and covered a radius of 10 feet. In that instant, Lu Yi felt a stinging pain on his skin. He was on high alert. Dao 13! He hurriedly shouted. Dao 13 immediately turned around and pounced on him. He pushed him to the ground and covered him with his sturdy body. Almost at the same time that Dao 13 protected Lu Yi, the dots of starlight suddenly bloomed like white pear blossoms. What followed was a violent roar and explosion. Within 10,000 feet of the woman, all the Blood Clan members who heard the sound of the bell died one after another with blank expressions on their faces. Under the cover of the light, the area was as bright as day. However, all the blood race members turned into ashes and disappeared. In Lu Ye's perception, Yu Lingfeng, who had been planted with the soul manipulation divine rune, and the blessing lord, who was at the true lake stage, also disappeared without a trace. The violent sound made Lu Ye's eardrums hurt. He was secretly shocked when he felt the power of this inexplicable spell. This kind of method was not something an ordinary Spirit Sea realm cultivator could perform. At the very least, Lu Ye had never seen such a method before. And the aura that the mysterious woman released at that moment was so powerful that Lu Ye found it hard to believe. Even the sect master couldn't be compared to this woman. Continuous explosions came from not far away, accompanied by the crisp ringing of the bells. It was obvious that the woman was on a killing spree. Chapter 1027. Blood-blooded humans. Someone from the blood race shouted in surprise. Then, streaks of energy belonging to the divine sea realm rose up. Under the night sky, many blood race cultivators at the divine sea realm reacted quickly. They turned into bloody lights and dashed towards the woman. For a moment, the scene was grand and chaotic. Suddenly, there was a clear sound of a sword. Then, a dot of cold light bloomed in the sky. It split into thousands of rays and slashed down from the sky. In the densely packed camp of the Blood Kindred, there were many casualties. Many of the Blood Kindred were cut into pieces by the sharp sword chi before they could even react. Some of the Blood Kindred at the Divine Sea realm screamed and fell from the sky. Many rays of sword light wreaked havoc in the camp of the Blood Race. Under the night sky, a figure stood in the sky with sword chi around him. He was so majestic that he looked like a god who had descended from the sky. Lu Ye got up in a sorry state and shook his head. When he turned around, he saw that there was no one left alive within a radius of 3,000 meters around him. All the blood race cultivators in this area had been wiped out by the mysterious woman's spell. Even Dao Shursan's back was covered in blood and flesh. Dao Shursan was a divine ocean realm cultivator and his body was extremely strong. The woman's spell wasn't targeted at Dao Shursan. He had only been affected by the spell, but he was already so injured. If they were to fight face to face, Dao Shursan would be no match for the woman. He looked up again and saw an old man with white hair and a beard in the sky. He was wielding a sword to kill his enemies. He was a sword cultivator. His sword intent was so sharp that even looking at him with the naked eye would make one's eyes sore and feel a stabbing pain in one's soul. It was as if a sharp sword would slash down on one's head at any moment. The woman and the old man were obviously together. After the woman made her move, the old man jumped out as well. They weren't the only ones. Although the old man had killed some of the blood race cultivators, there were too many of them. Many of them had already reached the woman. Although the woman was powerful, she was only a Dharma consolidating cultivator. Under such circumstances, she couldn't fight against so many people. However, at this moment, another figure descended from the sky like a meteor. He landed right in front of the woman, causing the ground in front of her to crack. Lu Ye couldn't help but narrow his eyes. With the augmentation of the spiritual runes of insight in his eyes, his pupils shrank involuntarily. The third figure that appeared out of nowhere wasn't too burly or tall, but his body was brimming with vitality. Even Dao Shursan had to admit defeat in front of him. As soon as he raised his hand, he caught a blood kindred that was close to him. No matter how hard the blood kindred struggled, he couldn't get rid of Lu Li. Lu Li squeezed his hand and crushed the blood kindred's head. Immediately after, his figure swayed. He seemed to be clumsily executing punches and kicks, but those punches and kicks all contained extremely terrifying might. Without exception, all the blood race clansmen within 30 meters of him and the woman exploded into clouds of bloody mist. The old sword cultivator in the air also controlled his flying sword to accurately kill the many blood clan members in the Divine Sea realm who were charging towards the mysterious woman. There was actually no one who achieved anything. With the protection of this body cultivator and sword cultivator, the woman was able to unleash even more of her power. She unleashed one powerful spell technique after another, and wherever they passed, large swathes of blood tribe members would fall. Blood flowed like rivers in the blood tribe camp, and corpses were everywhere. blood flowed everywhere. More and more powerful auras rose from the peak of the mountain. Such a huge commotion naturally alarmed the most powerful Blood Clan members gathered at the peak of the mountain. The auras rising from the peak were much more powerful than those at the Divine Sea realm at the foot of the mountain and halfway up the mountain. However, at this moment, a furious roar came from the peak of the mountain. "How dare you!" At the same time, a streak of light suddenly shot out from the peak of the mountain. It was as fast as lightning. A person's voice came from the streak of light. "We didn't succeed." The old sword cultivator glanced at the peak of the mountain and shouted rudely. Then, he turned to the woman and the body cultivator and shouted, "Let's go." The woman pursed her lips and smiled. She put her palms together and gently pushed them forward. A large amount of starlight flew out and instantly covered a radius of 3,000 meters. There was a loud explosion and a dazzling light. The woman and the body cultivator shot up into the sky. In the air, the old sword cultivator put away his flying sword and was about to escape. In a flash, Lu Yi shot up into the sky and headed in the direction of the old man. He rushed over. Dao Shisan saw this and hurriedly followed. Lu Ye's abnormal movements naturally didn't escape the old sword cultivator's perception. In fact, the old sword cultivator had noticed it the moment he appeared. After all, the mysterious woman's spell had killed all the Blood Clan members. Only Lu Yi and Dao Shisan were safe and sound. It was naturally eye-catching. His eyes. The old man hesitated for a moment. Then he urged his sword to wrap around Lu Yi and Dao Shisan. He chased after the woman and the body cultivator. Lu Yi let out a long sigh. Although he was wrapped in the old man's sword and flew with him, Lu Yi could clearly sense a wisp of pure sword intent enveloping him. If he did anything inappropriate, the old man would immediately kill him. Naturally, he didn't dare to do anything inappropriate. He even told Dao Shisan, "Don't move." Dao Shisan immediately calmed down. The old man glanced at him with a pensive look in his eyes. They sped along the way. At first, there were a large number of Blood Clan experts chasing after them. However, sword cultivators were so fast that even the Blood Clan's blood escape technique couldn't catch up. Moreover, when facing a sword cultivator like the old man, the number of Blood Clan experts chasing after them might not be enough. Therefore, after a while, the Blood Clan experts who were chasing after them stopped. They watched helplessly as the old man's sword disappeared from their sight. 2 hours later, the old man pressed his sword down and landed on top of a mountain peak, waiting quietly. He didn't care about Lu Yi and Dao Shisan. He sat cross-legged beside them and focused on regulating his breathing. Lu Yi had a lot of questions to ask, but seeing the old man like this, he didn't want to disturb him. He could only stay put. He had rushed toward the old man at the last moment because he wanted to leave with the old sword cultivator. If he guessed correctly, the Blood Clan experts who appeared tonight would be at these human experts in the Blood Race camp were all from the Jade Blood Holy Land. The Blood Clan's angry roar had undoubtedly confirmed Lu Ye's guess. He was originally going to the Jade Blood Holy Land, but because the Blood Clan was gathering troops, the road ahead was dangerous. He could only take Dao Shisan with him under the guise of a blood slave. Tomato-free reading now that he had a chance to escape, he naturally couldn't miss it. Otherwise, it wouldn't be so easy to escape when the Blood Clan really started attacking the Jade Blood Holy Land. Dao Shisan twisted his body at the side. The injury on his back must have made him feel uncomfortable. Lu Yi checked him and found that it was only a flesh wound. It wasn't a big deal, so he didn't bother with him. With Dao Shisan's physique, such an injury could be healed in a few days. In the silent night, the space beside them distorted slightly. Then, a figure appeared. It was an old man with white hair and a beard. He was short and skinny, but his eyes were extremely spirited. Lu Ye's heart trembled. He knew that this person was a ghost cultivator. Moreover, he was definitely the strongest ghost cultivator he had encountered so far. This was because he didn't notice the ghost cultivator at all before he appeared. Even Dao Shisan didn't notice any clues. Recalling what had happened just now, Lu Yi guessed that this ghost cultivator should be the one who shouted at the top of the mountain. He was a human ghost cultivator. It was obvious why he had run to the top of the mountain where the Blood Clan experts gathered. He obviously wanted to kill Saint Venerable Xingyu. Over the years, the Blood Clan had besieged the Jade Blood Sacred Land on a large scale. The Star Moon Sacred Land was in charge of coming here. If they could kill Saint Venerable Xingyu before the battle, it would be a great deterrent to the hundreds of thousands of Blood Clan troops. It might even cause the Blood Clan troops to lose their morale. This would reduce the pressure on the Jade Blood Sacred Land in the upcoming battle. However, he had obviously failed. That was why he shouted, "I didn't succeed." The strength of a holy seed was much stronger than that of an ordinary Blood Clan member. Saint Venerable Xingyu wasn't a newborn holy seed like Lan Qiue. He had already cultivated to the peak of this world. How could he be killed so easily? Although the female Dharma cultivator, the old sword cultivator, and the body cultivator were disrupting the Blood Clan's camp and distracting the Blood Clan experts, the ghost cultivator still didn't succeed. This should be the rendezvous point that the human experts had agreed to meet. The old sword cultivator was the fastest. Even with Lu Yi and Dao Shisan, he was still the first to arrive. The second was the ghost cultivator. However, as soon as he appeared, two streams of light rushed over from not far away. They quickly landed in front of him, revealing the figures of the woman and the body cultivator. Several pairs of eyes looked at Lu Yi and Dao Shisan. The ghost cultivator said, "Jian Guhong, why did you capture these two blood slaves?" The woman pursed her lips and smiled. "These two aren't ordinary blood slaves. The stronger one is at the divine ocean realm. The other one is slightly weaker, but he's at the true lake realm." When Dao Shisan activated his spiritual energy, she clearly sensed it. However, she was busy killing Blood Clan members. Dao Shisan was only protecting Lu Yi and didn't attack her. Therefore, she didn't pay attention to Dao Shisan. The ghost cultivator was shocked. A divine ocean realm blood slave? This isn't common. He changed the topic. But blood slaves are blood slaves. Unless there's a holy seed to remove the blood imprint in their bodies, their status as blood slaves will never change even if their original owners die. They will only bow and scrape before the Blood Clan for the rest of their lives. What's the use of capturing them? The body cultivator didn't say anything. He just stood at the side and watched coldly. Lu Yi hurriedly cupped his fists and bowed. "Greetings to all of you. Seniors, please know that the two of us aren't blood slaves. We were planted with a blood imprint by the Blood Clan. This matter had to be explained clearly. Otherwise, they would be killed by these unbelievably strong divine ocean realm cultivators. That would be an injustice." The ghost cultivator grinned. "Of course you won't admit that you're a blood slave." As he spoke, a dagger suddenly appeared in his hand. "Come, I'll send you on your way. I promise you won't feel any pain." Chapter 1028. Sensing the old ghost cultivator's malice, Dao Shisan appeared in front of Lu Yi in a flash. His gaze was solemn and his aura was ready to explode. The old ghost cultivator stopped in his tracks, slightly surprised. "They're not blood slaves." The old sword cultivator called Jian Guhong slowly opened his eyes and said, "Why do you say that?" The old ghost cultivator tilted his head and looked at him. Jian Guhong's gaze was like a sword as he looked at Dao Shisan in front of Lu Yi. This person should be a Dao soldier. Dao soldier? The others were stunned and carefully sized him up. After a while, the female cultivator nodded slightly. "I was wondering why I felt that he was weird. So he's a Dao soldier. Your eyes are really sharp. You actually saw through him at a glance." The old ghost cultivator was stunned. Why would there be a Dao soldier in the blood refining realm? He looked at Lu Yi. "Kid, you made this Dao soldier?" Dao Shisan was a Dao soldier. Dao Shisan had personally told Lu Yi that. However, Lu Yi really didn't know what a Dao soldier was. When he first heard this title, he thought it was a creation of Yanshi, similar to his master's clone, Shao Dai. However, Dao Shisan wasn't a creation of Yanshi. He was a living person. Lu Yi shook his head honestly. "Then why is he following you and being so loyal to you?" The old ghost cultivator clearly didn't believe him. Normally, a Dao soldier would only be loyal to their master. However, this matter was indeed strange. He also didn't think that Lu Yi, a true Lake Realm cultivator, could make a Dao soldier like Dao Shisan. Maybe he and I hit it off. Lu Yi naturally couldn't say that it was the work of a soul controller. Nonsense. The old ghost cultivator was amused by him. But why would there be a Dao soldier in the blood refining realm? The female cultivator frowned. She really couldn't understand. In the blood refining realm, humans didn't have a good cultivation environment. Even if they were taken in as blood slaves, they couldn't have high cultivation. Therefore, Divine Sea Realm blood slaves were very rare. Not to mention Dao soldiers. It was difficult for humans to cultivate, so who could make a Dao soldier? That's why I brought them along, Jian Guhong said slowly. Just because there aren't any Dao soldiers in the blood refining realm doesn't mean that there aren't any other places. As soon as these words were spoken, everyone's bodies trembled. Old ghost, you mean? The old ghost cultivator's eyes narrowed. However, Lu Yi couldn't hear what the old ghost cultivator said next. He only sensed a surge of spiritual sense. Clearly, these people were communicating with each other using spiritual sense. As they conversed, they kept looking at him and Dao Shisan. After a short while, their conversation ended. The female magic cultivator nodded slightly. It's easy to verify whether or not they're blood slaves. We'll definitely encounter vampires on the way back. We'll know when we test them. With that, she produced a spirit boat. Let's go. The few of them landed on the spirit boat in a flash. Lu Yi gave Dao 13 a look, and the two of them landed on the boat as well. The female Dharma cultivator channeled her spiritual energy, and the spirit boat immediately turned into a stream of light that shot into the sky. Along the way, the Spirit Sea Realm cultivators all seemed to have a lot on their minds and were very quiet. Lu Yi had many questions to ask, but it was not the right time to ask. Along the way, they encountered a group of vampires that should be heading to the Star Moon Holy Land. Under the command of the female Dharma cultivator, Lu Yi and Dao 13 jumped off the spirit boat and rushed into the group of vampires to kill them. This was their way of verifying whether or not Lu Yi and Dao 13 were blood slaves. As blood slaves, they couldn't harm vampires in the slightest. In their hearts, vampires were supreme. Naturally, they wouldn't be blood slaves if they dared to kill vampires so wantonly. After verifying that Lu Yi and Dao 13 were pure humans, the old ghost cultivator's attitude towards Lu Yi became much more amiable. He also started chatting with him. He was surprised to learn that Lu Yi had come all the way from the north to join the Jade Blood Holy Land. One had to know that this journey wasn't short. Even though Dao 13 was a Spirit Sea Realm cultivator, it wasn't easy for two humans to travel all the way south. Kid, how did you sneak into the vampires group? The old ghost cultivator was very puzzled. Logically speaking, if Lu Yi and Dao 13 weren't blood slaves, they shouldn't have been able to stay safe in the vampires group. However, they were able to stay safe in the hundreds of thousands of vampires. Junior has a few tricks up my sleeve. I was able to trick a vampire into thinking that we were his blood slaves, Lu Yihanhu explained. The old ghost cultivator understood and glanced at Dao 13. No wonder he's so loyal to you. You used that method on him as well. Dao soldiers generally had low intelligence. Since Lu Yi had the means to confuse vampires, it wasn't a problem for him to confuse a Dao soldier. Yes. The old ghost cultivator warned, when we go back to the Holy Land, don't use that method casually. If I find out, I won't let you off easily. Lu Yi said happily, Seniors, you really are from the Jade Blood Holy Land. It's the real deal. Lu Ye's heart calmed down. The spirit boat flew very quickly. Although Dao 13 was also a Spirit Sea Realm cultivator, he was limited by the quality of Lu Ye's flying spirit tool. Thus, although his flying spirit tool wasn't slow, it couldn't compare to the speed of the boat. In terms of speed alone, the current flying speed was naturally much faster than before. The further they went, the more desolate it became. It wasn't because of the environment, but because this place was close to the Divine Gate Sea. The human experts of the Jade Blood Holy Land would often go out of the Divine Gate Sea to take a look. Which vampire dared to gather here? It could be said that no vampire dared to casually step into the area around the Divine Gate Sea. It would only become lively when the Blood Race's army attacked the Jade Blood Holy Land. A few days later, a vast expanse of blood red appeared in front of them. They had arrived at the Divine Gate Sea. The seawater was like a pool of blood, and it was exactly the same as the blood pool Lu Yi had seen before. However, this blood pool was a bit too big. Elegant, right? The spirit boat didn't stop. It flew over the blood sea and continued forward. After flying for another half a day, they finally arrived at an island that was scattered all over the place. From afar, these islands looked as small as chess pieces in the blood sea. However, when they got closer, they realized that these islands were not small at all. The islands were oval-shaped and distributed above the blood sea. In the middle of these islands, there was an even larger island. On each of the outer islands, there was a huge city. The city walls were covered with all kinds of fortifications, and human cultivators were going in and out of the city. When it was time for the blood race to attack the Jade Blood Holy Land, the human side was naturally actively preparing for war. The many fortifications on the outer islands could be said to be the Jade Blood Holy Land's strongest line of defense. It was also because of this impregnable line of defense that the Jade Blood Holy Land could defeat the blood race's attacks again and again. However, Lu Yi felt that things weren't so simple. From the information he had received, the blood race's army was at least 1 million soldiers. With such a huge lineup, including holy venerables and heavenly venerables, the Jade Blood Holy Land might not be able to stop them with just this line of defense. Unless the Jade Blood Holy Land had enough human experts. For example, Jian Guhong's team. But could there really be so many of them? To be honest, Lu Yi was already very surprised to see 4 such experts at once. No matter how strong the Jade Blood Holy Land's foundation was, there shouldn't be too many of them. He couldn't understand. But he had already achieved the goal of this trip. It had been nearly 5 months since he set off from Qianlu Blessed Land, and he finally arrived at the only human force in this world. The Deshang he wanted to find must be here. The female cultivator drove the spirit boat straight to the big island in the center of the islands. That should be the foundation of the Jade Blood Holy Land. On the big island, there were human figures everywhere. Many of them had cultivation, and there were also mortals who had never cultivated before. However, these mortals didn't have to experience the hardships of the human race outside, so they lived in peace and contentment. This made Lu Yi, who had seen all kinds of hardships of the human race after coming to this world, sigh. The Jade Blood Holy Land could only shelter a limited number of humans. Apart from the humans here, the vast majority of humans lived in the abyss of suffering. Now, there was one more blessed land in the blood refining world. With the improvement of Lan Chiyue's strength and the continuous expansion of his territory, the number of humans he could shelter would definitely increase. Along the way, he had enslaved many blessed lords of the blood kindred, and even a celestial venerable. Under the rule of those enslaved blood kindred, the human race's situation should be better. But this still couldn't solve the problem fundamentally. The Jade Blood Holy Land was a hope, a prairie fire. If one day, this prairie fire lit up the entire blood refining world, the human race would truly be free from their suffering. The spirit boat stopped at a spirit mountain in the center of the big island. The spirit mountain wasn't high, only a few hundred feet. There was a continuous cluster of buildings on it. Lu Yi guessed that it was the place where the higher-ups of the Jade Blood Holy Land gathered. "Wait here," the female cultivator instructed him. She put away the spirit boat and walked up the spirit mountain with the other 3. After returning from a mission, they naturally had to report back. Although they didn't kill Saint Xingyu this time, at least they had a rough idea of the military strength of the northern battlefront. In this way, the Holy Land could also respond. Before the Holy Lord summoned Lu Yi, they couldn't casually bring Lu Yi up. Lu Yi and Dao Shisan stood quietly and waited. There were no cultivators on duty here, and ordinary humans wouldn't come close to this place. This made the two seem a little out of place. After waiting for a long time, they felt a little bored. They looked around and saw a stone tablet not far away. Lu Yi glanced at it. At first, he didn't pay much attention to it. But soon, he shifted his gaze with a surprised expression. He walked up to the stone tablet and sized it up with rapt attention. At the same time, at the top of the mountain, a middle-aged man stood on a floating stone with his hands behind his back, overlooking the islands. Jian Guhong and the others walked behind the man and cupped their fists together. "Holy Lord!" The man turned around, revealing a handsome face with a warm smile on his face. "You're all back? You've worked hard." Chapter 1029. Jian Guhong and the others had returned to the Jade Blood Holy Land's Central Island's Spirit Mountain. They reported what they had seen and done on this trip. After Jian Guhong finished speaking, the old ghost cultivator said, "It's a pity that I didn't manage to kill Star Moon Saint this time. Originally, I had a chance to kill him, but that guy was too vigilant. He reacted the moment I attacked. In the end, I only managed to injure him." The Saint Lord shook his head and said, "Every saint seed in this world is favored by heaven and earth. It can be said that they are the children of destiny in this world. How can they be so easily killed? It's already very impressive that Senior Wu Chang was able to injure him." Everyone present knew how impressive a saint seed was. It was not something that an ordinary blood clan member could compare to. Wu Chang, for example, said that he had a chance to succeed, but in reality he didn't succeed. Even if he was given another chance, it would be impossible for him to succeed. Jian Guhong had also fought a saint seed head-on. With his strong foundation as a sword cultivator, he could only fight to a draw with the saint seed. This showed how powerful a saint seed was. It could be said that none of the blood clan's saint seeds were weaker than them. However, such a powerful holy seed had been beaten to death by someone before. And the person who had done this was the Saint Lord in front of them. It was also because of that battle that top experts like Jian Guhong and Wu Chang wholeheartedly acknowledged the middle-aged man's identity and status as the Saint Lord. It should be known that whether it was Jian Guhong, Wu Chang, or the female cultivator, they were all once famous figures in their world. They were all considered the top fighting forces of the human clan. Each of them was arrogant and unruly, and each of them was a character who could topple the sky with anger. They had all suppressed an era. It was not easy to make people like them submit. Before the middle-aged man appeared, Jian Guhong and the others were scattered all over the blood-refining realm. They were against the blood clan because they were strong enough and because they were not willing to submit to anyone. It was the middle-aged man's appearance that mixed these scattered sand together and created the Jade Blood Holy Land in the Divine Gate Sea. It was a pure land for the human clan. It stood until now. But now, the Jade Blood Holy Land was at its most critical moment. The Blood Clan has more troops this time than before. It seems that they want to finish this in one battle, the Saint Lord said slowly. The Holy Lord said slowly, "News from the east, south, and west has also been sent back. There are several holy seeds guarding each battle line and hundreds of thousands of soldiers. The total number of Blood Ray soldiers in all four directions is at least 3 million, maybe even more." Jian Guhong and the others frowned. This number was much higher than in the past. Although the Blood Race had sent troops to invade many times in the past, they had never exceeded 1 million. Thus, the Jade Blood Holy Land had been able to resist them. However, the Jade Blood Holy Land had also paid an extremely heavy price. When Lu Yi came this time, he saw that the Jade Blood Holy Land was surrounded by oval-shaped archipelagos and a large island in the center, but in fact, the terrain here was not like this at the beginning. In the beginning, there were many scattered islands in the center of the Shenkai Sea, at least 4 times the number of islands now. Due to the repeated battles, the outer islands were all shattered and sunk. Only the inner archipelago was left standing. This time, if they couldn't even protect the innermost islands, then the Jade Blood Holy Land would only have the central island left. It would be impossible to defend. Therefore, this time, the Holy Land's priority was to protect the outer islands. The most important thing was whether they could withstand the attack of the vampires. If they couldn't, once the vampires landed on the islands, they would destroy the islands immediately, creating a gap in the Holy Land's defensive line. Judging from the Blood Clan's troops this time, it would be very difficult for the Holy Land to stop the Blood Clan and keep the enemy outside. We can just kill our way out. The Blood Flash world is so big. We can kill the Blood Clan anywhere, Wu Chang said. Jian Guhong shook his head. It's easy for us to kill our way out, but what about the others on the island? They will definitely be angered by the Blood Clan. I'm afraid no one will be able to survive. The number of humans on the island was very large. They were all humans that the Holy Land had migrated from hundreds of thousands of miles around the Shunkei Sea in the early years. After decades of accumulation, the human race lived and worked in peace and contentment, and the base number was even larger. It was also because of this large base number of humans that the Holy Land could provide an endless supply of cultivators, turning into the Holy Land's power to resist the Blood Clan. Cultivators and ordinary mortals had always been inseparable. Honor and disgrace were one. This was the same whether in the 9 provinces or the blood refining world. Wu Chang said, "They can't expect us to live and die with them. It doesn't make sense." That being said, if things really got to that point, there might not be many top powerhouses of the human race who would be willing to flee alone. The female cultivator who had been silent all this time spoke up. What can our homeland provide? These people were not rootless trees or water without a source. They all had some background. The Blood Clan had never understood how so many human powerhouses had appeared out of nowhere in the blood refining world. If there were only 1 or 2 of them, it would be fine. There were so many humans that there were bound to be 1 or 2 lucky ones who had obtained some kind of opportunity. However, there were not just 1 or 2 of these human powerhouses, but dozens or even hundreds of them. This was the fundamental reason why the Blue Blood Holy Land had been able to stand firm under the attacks of the Blood Clan army time and time again. It was because the number of top powerhouses on the Blue Blood Holy Land side was enough to repel the Blood Clan army's attacks time and time again, causing them to suffer heavy losses. The Holy Lord shook his head. This is also what I'm puzzled about. I tried to contact our homeland the day before yesterday, and the response I received was that they had already provided us with assistance. However, he did not see any assistance. They have already provided it. The female cultivator frowned and suddenly looked pensive. It can't be. Jian Guhong undoubtedly realized something. Just as he was about to speak, the Holy Lord suddenly looked down the mountain with a puzzled expression. Then, his figure flashed and instantly disappeared. When he reappeared, he was at the foot of the mountain, in front of a stone stele. Lu Yi stood in front of the stone stele and looked at the line of words carved on it. He softly read, "Forever flowing jade blood." This shocked him to the extreme because the Blue Blood sect also had a similar stone stele with the same line of words carved on it. However, the Blue Blood sect's stone stele could only be considered half of a stone stele. The other half was with the Pill Heart sect. The 2 stone steles were combined into one to form the complete stone stele. It was said that the Pill Heart sect's sect master had personally carved it a few decades ago. However, he had split it in 2, giving one to the Blue Blood sect and one to the Pill Heart sect to symbolize the friendship between the 2 sections. However, after a few decades, the friendship between the 2 sects had been split into 2, just like the original stone stele. It was truly a sad sight. Lu Yi had not expected to see something similar to the one in his sect here. After reading this line, he could not help but read the next one. Pill Heart illuminates 10,000 years. He could not help but frown. His sect was the Blue Blood sect, and there was a Blue Blood Holy Land here. There was also a stone stele similar to the one in his sect. This was too much of a coincidence. Tao 13's aura suddenly fluctuated and the pressure of the Divine Sea realms spread out. Lu Yi was shocked and his thoughts were interrupted. He raised his hand and pressed the Panshan saber at his waist. When he turned his head, he saw a middle-aged man standing not far from him with his hands behind his back. He had not noticed when the other party had arrived. If Tao 13 had not reacted, he would not have noticed. Swish, swish, swish. Several figures flew over and stood in front of the middle-aged man. It was Jian Guhong and the others. At the same time, Lu Yi clearly sensed that various powerful divine wills spread out from all over the central island and paid attention to this place. Obviously, they had noticed the commotion here. However, these divine wills were soon withdrawn. Lu Yi broke out in a cold sweat. Only now did he realize that he had underestimated the strength of the Blue Blood Holy Land. Judging from the traces of the divine wills just now, there were probably dozens of divine sea realm cultivators gathered on the island. And this was just the traces. What about those who did not? He calmed himself down and looked at the middle-aged man. At first glance, he felt that this man looked familiar, as if he had seen him somewhere before. However, Lu Yi knew that he had never seen this man before. As for the identity of this man, he could tell from Jian Guhong and the others' standing position that this man was Saint Lord Jie of the Blue Blood Holy Land. Dao Soldier. The middle-aged man did not look at Lu Yi immediately. Instead, he looked at Dao 13 and used his powerful divine wills to examine Dao 13. Dao 13, who was not very intelligent, was infuriated by the man's unscrupulous behavior. He roared and rushed forward, punching the middle-aged man. Lu Ye's expression changed and he quickly shouted, "Stop!" However, he was a bit too late. With a loud bang, the middle-aged man did not move an inch. He raised his hand and easily blocked Dao Shisan's all-out attack. A shockwave that could be seen with the naked eye swept out, causing his hair and clothes to flutter in the wind. Suddenly, he raised one hand and pointed at a certain spot on Dao 13's chest. His movement was not fast. Even Lu Yi could see it clearly. However, there was an indescribable charm to it. What surprised Lu Yi was that Dao Shisan did not dodge his attack. Dao 13's body stiffened as if he had been struck by lightning. Then, his head drooped and he fell to the ground. Lu Ye's pupils shrank to the size of a needle. Endless coldness filled his body. He placed his hand on the Qing mountain saber and did not know if he should pull it out or not. He knew Dao 13's strength. He was not at the top of the divine sea realm, but he was not weak either. However, this man had subdued him so easily. Lu Yi did not even know what he had done. This guy. How terrifying was his cultivation level? The middle-aged man seemed to sense Lu Ye's worry and said, "Don't worry. He's just asleep." Lu Yi quickly looked at Dao 13 and found that he was indeed just asleep. He was even snoring. Lu Yi was speechless for a moment. This sort of Dao weapon was forged with a flawed technique, which is why Dao weapons are not very intelligent. The middle-aged man raised his head to look at Lu Yi. "How is Taishan?" Chapter 1030. Who is Taishan? Lu Yi looked at the middle-aged man. "You don't know him?" Lu Yi shook his head. He had never heard of the name Taishan and didn't know why the man in front of him would ask about him. The middle-aged man frowned. The young man's expression didn't seem fake. Under his powerful spiritual will, a true lake realm cultivator couldn't lie to his face. It seemed like the young man in front of him didn't know Taishan. But not knowing didn't mean he hadn't seen him before. Because other than him, only Taishan knew the method of refining the Dao soldier. Back then, he and Taishan had studied the method of refining the Dao soldier. But at that time, he felt that this method was too harmful, so he gave up on it. Now, it seemed that Taishan had used that method. The Dao soldier sitting in front of him was undoubtedly made by Taishan. That was why he could subdue Dao 13 so easily. Otherwise, no matter how strong he was, he couldn't make Dao 13 fall into a deep sleep with a finger. For people like them, killing an enemy was easy, but subduing an enemy often took several times more effort. With a Dao soldier made by Taishan and reading the next sentence of Jade Blood Eternity, the origin of the young man in front of them was obvious. But his cultivation seemed a bit low. Was this the help provided by his homeland? "Where are you from?" the middle-aged man asked. Lu Ye's eyes were filled with disbelief. He stared blankly at the middle-aged man in front of him, almost thinking that he had heard wrong. He asked with uncertainty, "What did you say?" The middle-aged man smiled and asked again, "Which continent are you from? Which sect are you from?" Even with Lu Ye's calm temperament, he was still shocked by this. He never thought that he would hear someone mention the words, 9 continents, in the blood-refining realm. Many thoughts rolled in his mind. He immediately reacted. "Senior, are you from 9 continents?" The middle-aged man nodded. "I'm not the only one from 9 continents. They are all from 9 continents." Behind him, Jian Guji and the others looked at Lu Yi with mischievous eyes. Lu Yi came from 9 continents, so they knew all about him. Because in the blood-refining realm, a Dao soldier didn't exist, let alone a divine sea realm cultivator. A Dao soldier. Only the 9 prefectures could give birth to such a Dao soldier. However, they hadn't confirmed this before, so they didn't tell Lu Yi about it. They only planned to ask him in detail after bringing him back. Now seeing Lu Ye's reaction, he knew that his guess was correct. This young man was truly from the 9 provinces. In this foreign land, he suddenly saw people from his homeland. Even though Lu Yi was born in the same generation as him, she couldn't help but feel a sense of familiarity. Thinking about it carefully, Jiuzhou Tianji had a use for sending him to the blood refinement realm. Naturally, he could also send others over. In Nu's opinion, the state cultivators who sued M were sent all over this place. Their official title was Oil Can See Repairman, and only then did they have the chance to roast you twice. The 5 clans must resist and establish a human power to resist the vampires endlessly. Lu Yi finally put down his hand from the hilt of his saber. He took a deep breath and suppressed the excitement in his heart. Then he cupped his fists and bowed. I'm Lu Yi of the Jade Blood Sect in the Force Province. Greetings, seniors. Jian Guhong and the others were stunned when they heard that. They all looked at the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man was also stunned. He stepped forward and grabbed Lu Ye's arm. You're from the Jade Blood Sect of the War Province? The Jade Blood Sect of the Fragrant Mountain? Lu Yi found that the reaction of the person in front of him was a little big. Logically speaking, with his cultivation, his mind was firm and steady. Even if the heavens were to collapse before him, he would surely be able to remain calm. But at that instant just now, his breathing was actually slightly unstable. This was obviously a sign that his mind was in turmoil. Who's in charge of the Jade Blood Sect now? The middle-aged man asked, his voice trembling slightly. Our sect master, Tangfit. Is the old man well? He's well. Lu Yi frowned slightly. The other party's grip on his arm hurt a little. The middle-aged man obviously realized it too. He quickly let go of Lu Ye's arm and nodded repeatedly. It's good that he's well. It's good that he's well. Lu Yi was surprised and doubtful. He vaguely guessed that the person in front of him probably had some relationship with his sect. Otherwise, with his cultivation, he wouldn't have lost his composure like this. But who was he? Why was he so concerned about his sect and the sect master? Senior, you are... The middle-aged man took a deep breath and smiled warmly. My name is Feng Wujiang. I don't know if you've heard of me. Lu Yi was stunned for a moment, then immediately blurted out, Impossible. Feng Wujiang was a name that resounded like thunder. Not long after he stepped onto the path of cultivation, he had heard of this name. As he grew, he continued to recognize the weight of this name. It could be said that the name Feng Wujiang represented an era. Not just him, but the entire 9 prefectures. Who didn't know about it? The Jade Blood Sect's success was because of Feng Wujiang, and its failure was also because of Feng Wujiang. Back then, the sect was able to become a first-rank sect because of the leadership of this eldest senior brother. Eldest senior brother died, and the sect gradually declined. The remnants of the poison were still in the Spirit Stream battlefield and the Cloud River battlefield. Lu Yi was targeted and killed by the Myriad Devil Ridge. Even when he entered the military prefecture guard, he was suppressed by the Divine Sea realm of his own sect because of Feng Wujiang. Lu Ye's impression of this eldest senior brother was very complicated. Naturally, there was worship, but more than that, there was resentment. He didn't know the specifics of what happened back then. No one had told him in detail. However, the current situation of his sect couldn't be separated from this eldest senior brother. Even before he entered the Jade Blood Sect, the Jade Blood Sect was almost wiped out by Tianji. Thoughts churned in his mind. Looking at the person in front of him, Lu Yi frowned and said, My eldest senior brother has been dead for almost 40 years. Don't lie to me. Jian Guhong said, The people in front of you are all dead people. What do you mean? Lu Yi looked at him. Jian Guhong said, I am the 5th sword master of the North Profound Sword Sect. The female cultivator pursed her lips and smiled. The 7th sect master of the 10,000 Laws sect of the Thunder Prefecture, Yu. Even the body cultivator who had been silent all this time said, the 3rd sect master of the Vitality sect of the War Prefecture, Meng Jie. The ghost cultivator Wu Chang chuckled. I'm not a sect master or sect master. I'm a rogue cultivator. Even if I told you, you wouldn't know. It was unknown whether this was true or not, but ghost cultivators had always been low-key and secretive. There were some who deliberately hid their origins. Lu Ye's mind was shaken by these simple words. He didn't know when the 3rd, 5th, and 7th generations were, but the sect masters and sect masters of the 9 prefectures had obviously passed down more than these few generations. In other words, no matter who these people were, they were all old antiques. They had lived for at least a few hundred years, or even longer. Lu Yi was familiar with the North Profound Sword sect and the Vitality sect. They were first-rank sects of the Haotian Alliance of the War Prefecture. Lu Yi had also dealt with the 10,000 Laws sect of the Thunder Prefecture. Back then, at the core of the Spirit Stream battlefield, which sect hadn't been blackmailed by him? The 10,000 Laws sect belonged to the 10,000 Demons Ridge. In the world of the 9 prefectures, the two camps were at odds with each other. However, in the blood refining world, top experts from different camps could peacefully coexist and serve the same person. How bizarre was that? Yet it was natural, because this wasn't the 9 prefectures. This was the blood refining world ruled by the blood race. Whether it was the Haotian Alliance or the 10,000 Demons Ridge, they only had one identity in the blood refining world. Cultivators of the human race. No wonder Jian Guhong, Wu Chang, and Meng Jie all looked a bit old. It was because they had lived for countless years. Only Yu Ji was a woman. She had the ability to retain her youthful appearance. Although one couldn't tell her age, her real age might not be younger than the others. These people were undoubtedly sent by Tianji of the 9 prefectures. And they definitely weren't sent here all at once. They should have been sent here one by one at different times. In this case, Tianji of the 9 prefectures had already located the blood refining world. He had been using various means to save the human race in this world. There were some results, but it was still difficult to change the general trend of the blood refining world. In fact, there was one thing that had always puzzled Lu Yi. That was, the lifespan of a divine sea realm cultivator was usually very long. For this and that reason, my lifespan has been reduced to a certain extent. But I'm still alive. A divine sea realm cultivator could easily live for a few hundred years. The two camps of the 9 prefectures often fought against each other. It was true that there were many divine sea realm cultivators who had fallen. However, it wasn't to say that every divine sea realm cultivator in every era would die. Especially those divine sea realm cultivators who could lead an era like eldest senior brother. If they didn't die, where did they go? Maybe some of them were in seclusion to comprehend the mysteries above the divine sea realm. But it was also possible that they were chosen by Tianji of the 9 prefectures and sent here. Lu Yi suddenly understood. No wonder Jian Guhong and the others were so powerful. Just a few of them dared to kill hundreds of thousands of blood ray soldiers. It was because they weren't ordinary divine sea realm cultivators. Each of them was a powerful cultivator who had suppressed the heroes of an era. Elegant, right? Only such people were qualified to be sent here by Tianji of the 9 prefectures. Although Lu Yi didn't know what kind of price one had to pay to send someone here from the 9 prefectures, it was definitely not small. Therefore, not just anyone could be sent here. No one knew about this. Everyone thought they were already dead. Looking at the person who called himself Feng Wujiang, Lu Yi finally understood why he felt a sense of familiarity when he first saw him. It was because of Maid Fengyu. Maid Fengyu was his daughter. Naturally, she had some of his shadow. Just as he was lost in thought, Yu Ji suddenly pointed to the side. Look over there. Lu Yi turned his head and saw a white-haired old woman. She was hunched over and supported herself with a walking stick. Her body was trembling as if she could fall at any moment. Don't be fooled by her appearance. That's Granny Gio, the second Valley Master of Medicine King Valley. She's the oldest among us. She's lived for more than 1,000 years. Don't offend her. Otherwise, you won't even know how you died. Even I grew up listening to her name. Chapter 1031. Lu Ye's eyes twitched. He didn't know if Yu Ji was telling the truth or not. Because from the outside, Granny Jiao looked like an ordinary old woman with one foot in the grave. She didn't have any aura to speak of. Granny Jiao suddenly turned her head and looked over, a kind smile on her wrinkled face. It's not good to speak ill of others behind their backs. Little you need to change your personality. Yu Ji curtsied. Granny is right. I will definitely change. Granny Jiao nodded slightly and walked away shakily. Lu Yi suddenly felt that this jade blood holy land was full of crouching tigers and hidden dragons. You just became my master. Feng Wuqiang had Lu Yi. Lu Yi came back to his senses and bowed. Sect master didn't abandon me. I was accepted into our sect several years ago. Lu Yi greets eldest senior brother. He could more or less confirm that this person in front of him was his legendary elder senior apprentice brother. Lu Yi didn't think that these people around him needed to deceive him. These people were all peak divine sea characters. If they were placed in the 9 provinces, they would be powerhouses that could shake an entire continent with a stomp of their feet. In this foreign land, what benefit would there be in deceiving him? But Lu Yi didn't expect that his eldest senior brother, who was rumored to have died almost 40 years ago, was still alive. Moreover, he was sent to this blood-refining world by heaven's secrets. This was a bit strange. Feng Wujiang nodded in satisfaction. This old man's vision has always been good. Now it seems that junior brother will become a great person. Lu Yi blushed with shame. Compared to senior brother and the other seniors, I am nothing. Jian Guhong smiled. You are still young. Don't belittle yourself. Which one of those chosen by heaven's secrets to be sent here are mediocre? In the future, you might be able to be like your eldest senior brother and surpass him. He turned to Feng Wujiang. Holy Master, congratulations on your reunion. However, this isn't the place to talk. Feng Wujiang slapped his forehead. I'm so happy that I'm about to faint. Come with me, junior brother. Saying so, he affectionately grabbed Lu Ye's arm, rose into the air, and flew towards the peak. The others, however, didn't move. After Feng Wujiang and Lu Yi left, Yu Ji said in confusion, they can't be reinforcements sent from our homeland, right? They're all in Photoshop, what can they do? You can't judge a book by its cover, and the sea can't be measured with a pint pot. Since Tianji has sent him here, there must be a reason for Tianji to do so. Tianji is unpredictable, Tianji is unpredictable. Let's wait and see. At the peak of the mountain, Feng Wujiang brought Lu Yi to a pavilion. He had Lu Yi take a seat while he sat across from Lu Yi. It could be seen that eldest senior brother was very happy. The smile on his face never disappeared. I know junior brother has many questions, but I also have many questions. Can I ask first? Feng Wujiang stared at Lu Yi. Lu Yi nodded. Sure, Maojia 5. How has our sect been in recent years? Not very good. Lu Yi shook his head slowly and gave a brief account of what he knew. The smile on Feng Wujiang's face slowly disappeared and was replaced by seriousness and self-blame. When he heard that their sect was almost erased by Tianji, his self-blame grew even stronger. Back then, our sect's disciples were oppressed. Sect master was disheartened. In order to protect the remaining disciples, he dismissed almost all the disciples who were still alive. Before I entered the sect only had the sect master and senior apprentice sister Shui Yuan. Third apprentice brother Xiao Xinghe was sent to White Emperor City while fourth apprentice brother Li Baxian was sent to Pill Heart sect. However, both of their cultivations have reached the true lake stage and are now working in the law division of the military continent guards. After a pause, Lu Yi said, although he didn't mention you in front of me, I know that sect master really cares about you. Since eldest senior brother isn't dead, why didn't you greet sect master before coming here and let him and senior sister Shui Yuan know that you're still alive? Feng Wujiang smiled bitterly. I didn't have the chance. Under normal circumstances, I would have been a dead man. But at the last moment, I was replaced by the heavenly secret pavilion and was lucky enough to keep my life. After that, I was directly sent here. Where would I have the time to say hello to this old man? Lu Yi understood. For example, when he came to the blood-refining realm this time, he thought that he was going to escape from the nameless secret realm. Who knew that he would be directly sent here? Tianji wouldn't discuss anything with you. How is the situation in the 9 continents now? Feng Wujiang calmed himself down and asked. It is still the same. The 2 factions are at odds with each other and the 9 continents are at war. In the past few decades, there hasn't been anyone like eldest senior brother who can single-handedly change the situation. Actually, I took the wrong path back then. Feng Wujiang sneered. The 2 camps have been at odds with each other for so many years, and they've long been like fire and water. It's impossible to rely on brute force to subdue one of them. The more you suppress them, the fiercer the rebound will be. I'm a good example, junior brother, you should learn from it. Back then, when Feng Wujiang was in charge, the situation was good for the Haotian alliance. But just as Feng Wujiang said, the stronger the suppression, the fiercer the counterattack. In the last battle, the demons of the Wanmo Ridge fought back desperately. Countless warriors of the Spirit Sea realm surrounded him fearlessly. Even someone as strong as him was drowned by the demons of the Wanmo Ridge. Feng Wujiang wanted him to take this as a warning, but Lu Yi didn't know how to respond. After all, he was only a true Lake Realm cultivator. In the 9 continents, he was just a member of the masses. He didn't even have much say in the war province, let alone the entire 9 continents. Let's not talk about this. Tell me about the sect. Feng Wujiang sat cross-legged on a chair without a care for his image. He faced Lu Yi with an excited look. He had been here for almost 40 years and knew nothing about the 9 continents. He was even more worried about the sect. Now that Lu Yi was here, he naturally wanted to ask about it. What does eldest senior brother want to know? I want to know everything. Feng Wujiang chuckled. Let's start with you. How did you enter the sect? Was it because the old man's eyes were as bright as torches that he saw your extraordinary talent at a glance and wanted to recruit you? Lu Yi blushed with shame and told him the cause and effect of his joining the Jade Blood sect. Feng Wujiang listened with great interest and exclaimed from time to time. He never thought that his junior brother's experience would be so complicated. He wasn't the old man he imagined at all. The drama of seeing Lu Ye's extraordinary talent at a glance was caused by various coincidences. Speaking of which, when the sect master recruited Lu Yi, later, he had the idea of letting Lu Yi to cultivate in the sect 6 times over a period of time and didn't really fight. He wanted Lu Yi to stay. After all, at that time, the Jade Blood sect was in decline, and the sect master and senior sister Shui Yuan no longer had the intention to maintain the Jade Blood sect. When he heard Lu Yi talk about the Battle of the Golden Light Summit, he mentioned how senior sister Wei Yang brazenly rushed over and saved him from the fire and water. Li Baxian's sword came from the west, and the senior brothers and sisters worked together to protect their new junior brother. Feng Wujiang didn't have the demeanor of a divine ocean realm cultivator at all. It was as if he was in the middle of it all, and he wanted nothing more than to kill all the cultivators of the Myriad Demon Ridge who made things difficult for Lu Yi. After the Battle of the Golden Light Summit, Lu Yi could be considered to have truly joined the Jade Blood sect and returned to the sect to heal. After that, he cultivated on the Spirit Stream battlefield while developing the sect, and finally saved the Jade Blood sect. Although the Jade Blood sect's grade wasn't high, its prospects were very good. With the sect master and Shui Yuan, 2 divine ocean realm cultivators, and Lu Yi himself had hope of reaching the divine ocean realm, there were many more Cloud River realm cultivators in the sect. In the next sect grade assessment, it wouldn't be a problem to get a 3rd-rank sect. Wait, junior brother, how many years have you cultivated since you embarked on the path of cultivation? Feng Wujiang keenly noticed something unusual. Almost 5 years, Lu Yi replied. In these 5 years, he had spent most of his time in the Spirit Stream tier. In the entire Spirit Stream tier, Lu Yi had spent almost 2 years, while in the Cloud River tier, he had only spent 1 year. That was because the Spirit Stream tier was the first tier of cultivation for cultivators, and it was also a tier where they laid down their foundations. Each and every spiritual aperture had to be slowly opened, so there were no shortcuts to speak of. After reaching the Cloud River realm, because of things like spirit sticks, Lu Ye's cultivation speed suddenly increased a lot. In just over a year, Lu Ye had reached the True Lake realm. Now, it had been more than a year and a half since he reached the True Lake realm. The main reason was that after entering the blood refining world, his cultivation progress slowed down. If he had still been in the 9 provinces during this time, it was very likely that he would have reached the divine ocean realm. Feng Wujiang couldn't help but reveal a look of shock. In just 5 years, junior brother has reached the True Lake realm 8th order? What kind of cultivation speed was this? Even if Feng Wujiang himself was someone who had obtained the heavenly secrets, he was still deeply shocked. Thinking back, how long did it take him to cultivate from nothing to the True Lake realm 8th order? It seemed to be almost 20 years. Of course, he belonged to the category of late bloomers. At the beginning of his cultivation, he didn't show any outstanding aspects. At this speed, it was only a matter of time before his junior brother reached the divine ocean realm. No wonder he was chosen by the heavenly secrets to be sent here. But cultivation speed was still cultivation speed. Lu Ye's cultivation wasn't high after all. In the upcoming battle against the blood race to besiege the Blue Blood Holy Land, his personal cultivation probably wouldn't play much of a role. Next, Lu Ye talked about Shui Yuan reaching the divine ocean realm and how the sect master was often bullied by Madame Yun. Hearing this, Feng Wujiang was overjoyed and laughed heartily. Lu Ye didn't have a complete train of thought. He just said whatever came to his mind. But no matter how small the matter was, as long as it was related to the sect, his eldest senior brother would listen with great interest. After learning that the sect master had now arrived in Grand Sky City and was a member of the elder group, Feng Wujiang sighed deeply. "Junior brother, it's been hard on you these past few years." The sect master was disheartened because of him, but also cheered up because of Lu Ye's rise. No matter what, he had to thank Lu Ye properly. Speaking of this, Lu Ye was a little worried. The sect master is probably very worried about my safety now. He was captured by Yu Daiwei in front of everyone in Team D9. Later, the sect master came to rescue him, but Yu Daiwei used the transmission array to escape the sect master's pursuit. Now, almost a year had passed and there was still no news of him. The sect master must be very anxious. Chapter 1032. However, he was in a foreign land and couldn't send a message to the sect master. Fortunately, as long as he didn't die, the battlefield mark wouldn't disappear. The sect master and the others could use this method to determine his safety. "What's up with that Dao soldier?" Feng Wujiang asked. Jian Guhong and the others had seen Dao Shisan before, so they had some guesses about Lu Ye's background. Similarly, Feng Wujiang also saw the Dao soldier and confirmed that Lu Ye was a cultivator from the 9 states. It's a complicated story. Lu Ye explained in detail how he was captured by Yu Daiwei and taken to a small secluded mystic realm. Feng Wujiang raised an eyebrow. "What does that supremacy look like?" "His appearance is very ordinary. There's nothing special about him, but his cultivation level should be very high. As for his height, he's about this tall." Lu Ye described briefly. "Taishan." Feng Wujiang immediately understood and saw through the supremacy's identity. "Eldest senior brother, you know him?" Lu Ye couldn't help but recall that the first thing eldest senior brother asked when he saw him was, "How's Taishan?" Now it seemed that eldest senior brother probably thought he was from Taishan. Otherwise, why would he have a Dao soldier with him? More than that, Feng Wujiang looked like he was reminiscing. "Taishan and I have known each other for a long time. He was my most capable subordinate back then. He also comprehended the refining method of Dao soldiers, so he naturally knows how to refine one." "You said that he had something like a disc in his hand?" "Yes, when he showed it to me, it seemed like he wanted me to do something with the disc, but no matter how I looked at it, I couldn't find anything special about it." Feng Wujiang's expression was slightly grave. Lu Ye didn't know what the disc was, but he knew. After all, he was the one who found it back then. However, even if he used it at that time, he couldn't win over the world, so he hid it with Chiu Min. He didn't expect that it would fall into Tai Shan's hands now. It seemed that Tai Shan hadn't been quiet in the past few decades when he wasn't in the 9 states. Feng Wujiang didn't know how it ended up in Tai Shan's hands. The only thing he was sure of was that it must have come from Qiumin based on his understanding of Tai Shan. There was probably some coercion involved. While he was deep in thought, Lu Yi asked, "Eldest senior brother, what exactly is a Dao armament?" Dao 13 had said that he was a Dao soldier, but Lu Yi had never figured out what a Dao soldier was. However, since eldest senior brother could recognize that Dao 13 was a Dao soldier, he should know something about it. It's a humanoid artifact refined using a secret technique. Under this secret technique, a Dao soldier can grow at an incredible speed, but the price is that their potential is squeezed out. Therefore, a Dao soldier will have a good cultivation, but there will be no room for improvement. Moreover, this secret technique will cause great damage to the Dao soldier's sentience. Take the one following you for example. He has a 5th-order Divine Sea Realm cultivation, but he won't be able to advance any further in his life. You should be able to tell that his sentience isn't high. Lu Yi nodded slightly. Only now did he understand what a Dao soldier was. Just as eldest senior brother had said, Dao 13's intelligence was not high. At best, he was only slightly better than a real fool. He was slightly frightened. From the looks of it, Dao 13 was not the only Dao soldier under Tai Shan's command. 13's rank explained many things. That Dao soldier was refined by Tai Shan. How did you make him obey your orders? Junior brother, I used a little trick to control his mind. Feng Wujiang's expression brightened. Control his mind? Like the blood race's blood seal? Lu Yi said, I've never seen the blood seal before and I don't know what it does, but my method is probably stronger than the blood seal. My control over Dao 13 is absolute. He won't disobey my orders. Is there a limit? Feng Wujiang asked again. What do you mean? Is there a limit to the number of people you can control? There shouldn't be. Lu Yi thought about it. He had enslaved a lot of blood race people along the way, and so far, he hadn't felt anything wrong with it. After all, the Soul Control Divine Rune was planted in the Soul Slave's Spirit Sea. Under normal circumstances, as long as Lu Yi could break through the soul defense of others, he could plant the Soul Control Divine Rune. Of course, if the soul was too strong, it would be difficult to plant the Soul Control Divine Rune. To provide you with the latest update of Great God Momo's Human Race Great Sage. Chapter 1032, Soul Control: The Wonderful Uses of the Formation Board. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation: When the rune was planted, the target would resist. Take Jian Guhong and the others for example. Lu Yi estimated that even if they opened up their soul defense, he wouldn't be able to plant the Soul Control Divine Rune on them. The difference in soul power was too great. An expert like Jian Guhong would only need to struggle a little to prevent his rune from forming. Good. Feng Wujiang's expression was excited. He patted Lu Yi's shoulder and said, Junior martial brother, it's great that you're here. Lu Yi looked at him in confusion. Feng Wujiang smiled and said, You're new here, so rest for now. I'll tell you later. Junior martial brother, you said you have a lot of questions. You can ask them now. Lu Yi did have a lot of questions, but he didn't know where to start. After a moment of silence, he asked, Senior martial brother, were you sent here after the final battle? Yes, it's been almost 40 years. What about Senior Jian Guhong and the others? They came even earlier, Feng Wujiang smiled. Feng Wujiang chuckled. Furthermore, they weren't sent here in batches. They were all sent here one by one. The span of time was very long, several hundred years. Junior brother, you were also sent here by heaven's will. You should have experienced your cultivation being sealed before, right? Lu Yi nodded. Yes. Now it seemed that all the human cultivators sent to the blood refining realm by Tianji had their cultivation sealed and had to slowly recover. He wasn't the only one. Junior martial brother, have you thought about why Tianji sent us here but sealed our cultivation? Heaven and earth have their own will. Tianji is the will of the 9 provinces. This realm should also have its own will, but it's not as strong as Tianji's. We were sent here from the 9 provinces, which is tantamount to invading this realm. If we don't conceal ourselves, the will of heaven and earth in this realm will react and will be in a disadvantageous situation. Feng Wujiang looked at Lu Yi in surprise. Junior Marshal Brother, you're indeed quick-witted to be able to think of this. We also had our own speculations as to why Tianji wanted to seal our cultivation, and our thoughts are similar to yours. He sighed. But because of this, many seniors were put in a disadvantageous situation as soon as they appeared. They lost a lot of people. Even if Jian Guhong and the others had a strong foundation, their strength was limited after their cultivation was sealed. If they were unlucky, they would be discovered by the blood race experts. Naturally, it boded ill rather than well. Why did Zhuzhou Tianji send so many top experts here? To save the human race of this realm? Lu Yi asked. Probably. We've been painstakingly searching all these years, but we haven't been able to find an accurate answer. Almost everyone was sent here without knowing anything. Back then, when I came here, the Jade Blood Sacred Land didn't exist, and those seniors didn't have much contact with each other. They were all experts who could suppress an era. Junior Marshal Brother, you also understand that no one is willing to submit to another. Moreover, there are people from both sides, so it's naturally difficult to unify. After that, I spent about 10 years contacting many seniors and established the Jade Blood Sacred Land in the Shunkei Sea with them. Then, I moved a large number of humans from the surrounding 50,000 kilometers of the Shunkei Sea to this place. That's how the Jade Blood Sacred Land came to this place. But because of this, we've been completely targeted by the blood race. Over the past few decades, the blood race has come to encircle us once every few years. Many seniors have died in battle, and the defenses of the Jade Blood Sacred Land have been weakened layer by layer. This time, the blood race has mobilized far more troops than before. Moreover, according to the information gathered by those seniors, the blood race has also mobilized a large number of experts this time. It's very likely that a large number of holy seeds are hidden among them. Senior Marshal Brother, what do you want me to do? Lu Yi asked. There's indeed something I need you to do, but there's no rush. The blood race is still gathering their forces. Moreover, it won't be easy for such a large force to cross the Shunkei Sea. We still have at least 2 months to prepare. However, the fact that Zhuzhou Tianji chose to send you here at this time means that you have the ability to help the Jade Blood Sacred Land increase its strength. I don't know what it is, but Junior Marshal Brother should know. Lu Yi thought for a moment and took out a formation disc from his storage space and handed it to his senior Marshal Brother. Feng Wujiang took it suspiciously and tried to inject spirit energy into it. In an instant, the formation disc was activated and an invisible energy surged out, enveloping Lu Yi and Feng Wujiang. Feng Wujiang's expression shook. This is, carefully sensing it, he could clearly sense the effect of this invisible energy. Under the guidance of this energy, his and Lu Ye's aura seemed to be very light. Great God Momo's The Great Sage of Human Tao is the soonest update. Chapter 1032, Great Sage The Wondrous Uses of Formation Discs, the Jade Blood Sacred Land. Moreover, he felt that he could borrow power from Lu Yi as long as Lu Yi didn't resist. At the same time, Lu Yi had a similar feeling. In his perception, his senior Marshal Brother beside him contained an extremely terrifying power. It was a power that Lu Yi didn't dare to borrow. If he used it rashly, his body wouldn't be able to withstand it. Calming himself down, Lu Yi said, the Twin Qi and Branch Formation Disc contains a spirit pattern called Twin Qi and Branch Formation. Within the range of the spirit pattern, everyone can easily borrow power from each other. Lu Yi had improved this formation disc many times. Now, the formation disc could cover a wider range and had practical use. It was no longer like the first time he made it, where it could only cover a range of 10 feet. Now, the formation disc could cover a range of 15 feet. 15 feet wasn't small. It could be used to save lives at a critical moment. Feng Wujiang's eyes flashed. He quickly realized the wondrous use of this formation disc. Borrowing power is only secondary. If we use this formation disc to form a formation, Lu Yi nodded. I've also considered this. Different formations require different numbers of cultivators to form. Generally speaking, only cultivators who were familiar with each other, cooperated with each other, and could trust each other could form a formation. Moreover, it required a lot of practice. Therefore, formations were rarely seen in battlefields between two factions. Most cultivators simply cooperated with each other. This was because not just anyone could form a formation with others to fight against the enemy. To see the soonest update of the Great Sage of Human Tao, Great God Momos, the Great Sage of Human Tao, is the soonest update. Chapter 1032, Great Sage of Human Tao, the Wondrous Uses of Formation Discs. Chapter 1033. If different cultivators wanted to form a formation, the first thing they needed to do was to connect their auras. However, auras were invisible and formless. Everyone was different, so it was naturally very difficult to connect their auras. Therefore, many large sects would have a group of people specifically responsible for practicing formations. These people generally didn't have bad aptitudes. If their cultivation wasn't high enough, it would be useless for them to form a formation. However, it also wouldn't be too high. Cultivators with high aptitudes would rather cultivate alone and increase their cultivation if they had the time to practice formations. Generally speaking, these people were those who were neither high nor low in their respective sections. After they formed a formation, they would be able to display power that surpassed their own level, increasing the foundation and strength of their sections. Within the 9 provinces, it was very rare to see formations on the front lines where the two factions were fighting. This was because casualties were frequent on the front lines. It wasn't easy to practice formations, but if they were damaged in a great battle, all of their previous practice would become meaningless. Therefore, although formations were very useful, it often required a large amount of manpower, energy, and even time. As a result, there weren't many cultivators in the 9 provinces who were willing to practice formations. However, what if there was something in this world that could allow people to easily connect their auras without the need for long periods of practice and without the need for too much reliance and trust between them? Then they could easily form a formation to defend against the enemy. The twin chi-linked formation disc was such an item that could assist them. It had to be said that Feng Wujiang's experience was still more extensive than Lu Ye's. Lu Ye's original intention of refining the twin chi-linked formation disc was to let the cultivators within the disc's range borrow each other's strength. It was only later that he realized that it could be used to form a formation. However, Feng Wujiang saw the greatest use of this item with a single glance. It wasn't used to borrow strength, but to assist cultivators in forming a formation. Moreover, if this item was used to form a formation, the effect might be better than just forming a formation. This was because cultivators could borrow strength from each other in a formation. If cultivators were said to be cigarette parts, then the twin chi-linked formation disc could easily fit these parts together, forming an inseparable whole. It could be said that the appearance of such an item could play an immeasurable role in a large-scale battle. As long as there were enough twin chi-linked formation discs, the overall strength of the Jade Blood Holy Land could increase by at least 30% or even more. This was extremely important to the current situation of the Blue Blood Holy Land. Over the past few decades, the Jade Blood Holy Land had not been able to nurture many powerful cultivators. However, with the massive population base, there were also many human cultivators. There were Cloud River tier cultivators and True Lake tier cultivators, and the twin chi-connected formation disc was suitable for them to use. Is it difficult to refine it? Feng Wujiang asked. Not at all. Lu Yi shook his head. How difficult was it to refine the array disc? Branding the spirit branch spirit veins on it was even easier. I'll take it and study it first. Feng Wujiang stood up. Junior brother, rest for now. I'll talk to you later. The appearance of the twin chi-connected spirit array disc undoubtedly made Feng Wujiang very excited. He couldn't wait to have his subordinates refine more in preparation for the upcoming battle. After giving these instructions, he soared into the sky and flew in a certain direction. Lu Yi could only swallow the words that were at the tip of his tongue. He really wanted to tell eldest senior brother that it wasn't difficult for him to refine that thing, but that might not be the case for others. The core of that thing wasn't a formation disk, but a spirit vein. Such a complex spirit vein wasn't something that just anyone could brand during the refining process. After eldest senior brother left, a green-robed man walked over and cupped his fists. "Sir, the Holy Lord has asked me to take you to rest." Lu Yi nodded slightly. "Lead the way." After a short while, the green-robed man led him into a large hall and settled him down. He had been travel-worn for the past half a year. If he hadn't met Jian Guhong and the others, he would have had to travel for more than a month to reach the Shenkai Sea. He was indeed a bit tired. After sitting cross-legged for a while, Lu Yi suddenly opened his eyes. He felt like he had forgotten something, but when he thought about it carefully, he couldn't remember what it was. He couldn't be bothered to think about it. When the time came, he would naturally remember it. Return at the foot of the mountain, Dao Shisan was sleeping soundly. When he opened his eyes, Lu Yi was already gone. He stood up and scratched his head. He didn't know what to do, so he just stood there like a wooden stake and waited. His thoughts were simple. If he couldn't find Lu Yi would come looking for him. He had to admit that not having high intelligence wasn't necessarily a bad thing. At the very least, he would have no worries. At the same time, somewhere at the foot of the sacred mountain, clinking sounds could be heard. Most of them were bare-chested men, sweating profusely. The surrounding environment was hot, and from time to time, scorching flames would erupt. This was the Holy Land's refining workshop. It was specifically responsible for refining spirit treasures for Divine Sea Realm cultivators. Feng Wujiang stood next to a skinny old man. That old man was the same as Jian Guhong and the others. His hair and beard were all white. Although he was skinny, his bare upper body was well defined. In his hand was a hammer larger than his head. In his other hand, he held the formation disc that Feng Wujiang took from Lu Yi. He activated both his divine will and spirit treasure to sense the structure of the disc. The skinny old man's name was Ouyangzi. He wasn't a sect leader. 300 years ago, he was the head refiner of the Tianji Business Alliance. He had refined countless spirit treasures in his life. Not only did he come from the Tianji Business Alliance, but many of the refiners gathered here were also from the Tianji Business Alliance. Although they were all powerful, they had never fought with others. After a long time, Ouyangzi opened his eyes with a serious expression. Feng Wujiang immediately asked, "Senior, can this be refined in large quantities?" Ouyangzi looked at him and weighed the hammer in his hand. He silently estimated the difference in strength between him and Feng Wujiang and gave up on hammering his head. He frowned and said, "Where did the Sacred Lord find this thing? How could such a thing be refined in large quantities?" In the entire workshop, he was probably the only one who had the ability to refine such a thing. And the success rate was very, very small. "What's wrong?" Feng Wujiang noticed that something was wrong with Ouyangzi's expression. The method used to refine this disc is a bit immature, but it can be seen that it has been passed down from generation to generation. The refiner must have been taught by a great master. But what puzzles this old man is that this kind of refining technique shouldn't have been able to imprint such a complicated spirit inscription on the disc. Ouyangzi had spent his entire life refining artifacts, so his eyes were naturally sharp. Lu Ye's refining technique was indeed immature. In his eyes, such a disc array was a defective product with many flaws, but it was still something that could be used. Judging from the refining technique, the refiner must have been taught by a very powerful refiner. But the key to this object wasn't the disc itself, but the spirit inscription on it. He had been shocked by the complexity and precision of the spirit inscription just now. He had never seen or heard of such a spirit inscription before, so he didn't know what it was used for. If he simply had to use his spirit chi to construct the spirit inscription, he had a conservative estimate of a 30% chance of success. But if he had to imprint the spirit inscription on the disc at the same time as he was refining artifacts, he wouldn't even have a 5% chance of success. It was almost impossible. "Who refined this disc?" Ouyangzi asked. In the sacred land, there shouldn't be anyone who could refine it, so he couldn't help but be curious. "My junior brother refined it." The Sacred Lord's junior brother? Ouyangzi was confused. He had never heard of the Sacred Lord having a junior brother. He's from the 9 states. Ouyang Zi suddenly understood. Did the 9 states Tianji send someone here again? And at this time, he couldn't help but think of many things. Your junior brother is very skilled in refining artifacts. If it's convenient, could the Sacred Lord take this old man to see him? I have some things to ask him. He mainly wanted to see with his own eyes how the Sacred Lord's junior brother had successfully imprinted the spirit inscription on the disc. Feng Wujiang was surprised. Senior, if you want to see him, I'll bring him here later. You can teach him a thing or two. It was somewhat inconceivable. One had to know that in the Tao of artifact refining, Ouyang Zi was already the most powerful person he had ever seen. In this Tao, Ouyang Zi was also very proud of himself, and he had never heard of him asking for advice from anyone. Senior, can't this be mass-produced? Feng Wujiang asked again. He felt something unusual from Ouyang Zi's tone. Ouyang Zi couldn't help but weigh the hammer in his hand. I can't refine this thing, let alone mass-produce it. Feng Wujiang was stunned. Even Senior can't refine it? Ouyang Zi said, it's easy to refine a disc, but I can't imprint the spirit inscription on it. It was too complicated. He had to spend a lot of time studying it. Even so, it didn't increase the success rate by much. Feng Wujiang frowned as he walked out of the workshop. That's not right. Junior brother clearly said that it wasn't difficult to refine this thing. Why did Senior Ouyang Zi say that he couldn't refine it? It didn't make sense that his junior brother's artifact refining skills were inferior to Ouyang Zi's. It had to be better. He wanted to ask about it now, but considering that Lu Yi had rushed all the way here and was probably resting, there was no need to rush. It wasn't until the next day that Lu Yi suddenly remembered that he was missing someone. He hurriedly went down the mountain to look for him. He saw Dao 13 standing there motionlessly. Sensing Lu Ye's aura, Dao 13 immediately looked over with a resentful expression. Lu Yi gave him a look, and Dao Shisan followed closely behind. When he returned to the mountain, he didn't know how to find eldest senior brother. There weren't many buildings on the mountain peak. There were only a few big buildings and a few side rooms. It seemed that the cultivators from the 9 states didn't live here. The azure-robed man from yesterday was still there. Lu Yi went up and asked, "Where's the Sacred Lord?" The azure-robed man replied, "The Sacred Lord went to the surrounding islands to investigate the fortifications. Before he left, he said that if you're well rested, you should wait for him on the mountain." Chapter 1034. Strike 010 got into the car and started to wander around the holy mountain. There were only a few big buildings here. There were only a few rooms in the hall. He could see everything at a glance. However, he was new here and couldn't run around casually. He could only pass the time like this. As he passed by a large hall, Lu Yi casually glanced at it and suddenly stopped. Then he strode into the hall. The hall was empty. There was only a pillar-shaped object standing in the middle of the hall. The 10 spirits elite cultivators excitedly came in front of the pillar-shaped object, their faces filled with nostalgia. It had been a long time since he had seen this thing. The creatures of the blood refinement realm might not recognize the object in front of them, but for the cultivators from the 9 regions, who didn't know? It was a pillar of heaven's secrets. In fact, after coming to the blood refinement realm, Lu Yi was thinking about the purpose of the 9 regions' heavenly secrets to send him here. He was also thinking about how to return to the 9 regions. He couldn't stay here forever. Since the heavenly secrets could send him here, there must be a way. Let him go back. However, the situation this time was different from the last time he entered the Wushuang continent. When he entered the Wushuang continent, he carried 4 divine pillars with him. With the divine pillars, he could contact the 9 regions. However, he didn't expect that there would be one on the holy mountain. With the divine pillar, why would he need to worry about how to go back? With the help of the divine pillar, he could complete the teleportation. He could buy some cultivation materials from the divine treasure house. Recently, he lacked cultivation materials. This was also the main reason why his cultivation progress was slow. He raised his hand and pressed on the divine pillar. His mind surged and connected to the divine pillar. Lu Yi frowned. There was no reaction. He connected again, but there was still no reaction. This was the first time he had encountered something like this. Every cultivator of the 9 regions had the ability to connect to the divine pillar. It was also the right given to the cultivators of the 9 regions by the divine pillar. There was no reason for there to be no reaction. However, Lui tried several times, but it was still useless. "Junior brother." Feng Wujiang's voice came from behind. Lui turned his head and asked Jejun, "Eldest senior brother, why can't you use the divine pillar?" Feng Wujiang explained, "Junior brother, you may not know this, but this place is not like the 9 prefectures. The Tianji pillar here can only be activated once every 5 years, and it will last for about the time it takes to brew a cup of tea. After that, a large amount of resources will be sent over from the 9 prefectures. After that, it will be in a state of silence." Lu Yi couldn't help being stunned. He hadn't expected this to be the case. Previously, he was still wondering how human cultivators could cultivate in the blood refining realm if there were no suitable materials for human cultivators to cultivate, such as spirit stones and the like. After all, he couldn't completely rely on absorbing the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. It turned out that the 9 prefectures would send resources here. There's still about a year before the next activation of the Tianji pillar. Naturally, you can't use it now. Why is this happening? Lu Yi was puzzled. I don't know the specific reason, but I guess it's probably related to the will of heaven and earth in this world. When the 9 regions Tianji sent us here, they did some concealment to prevent the will of heaven and earth in this world from detecting our invasion. The Tianji pillar's Rongma is probably the same. If it remains open all year round, the will of heaven and earth in this world will be able to trace the existence of the 9 regions in reverse. That's why it's activated once every 5 years, and the duration of each activation is not too long. Lu Yi looked pensive. "Junior martial brother, what do you want to buy?" Feng Wujiang asked. "I'm short on cultivation resources, so I wanted to exchange for some." Feng Wujiang smiled. "If that's the case, I'll give you some. I'll send some over to you. There are still some leftovers from the last batch." "Okay." Lu Yi nodded. Then he asked, "By the way, senior martial brother, do the sacred ground have blood crystals?" "Yes, junior martial brother wants those." In the past few decades, the blood race army had besieged the sacred ground several times. The number wasn't small. Xuetzi Yuquan Fuhai had died. Xing Shuodayan's body had been destroyed in year X6. However, some of the blood race had also died in the outer islands. The blood crystals of the blood race had been taken out and collected by human cultivators. Originally, the sacred ground wanted to study how to use the energy of the blood crystals to set up a formation. However, the energy in the blood crystals was also somewhat corrosive. It wasn't appropriate to use them to set up a formation, so they kept them. After every battle, the sacred ground would collect a large number of blood crystals. However, they couldn't use them, so they collected more and more blood crystals. Now, the sacred ground had a special warehouse used to store blood crystals. Blood crystals of different sizes and qualities could be said to be piled up like a mountain. Xen said that grade O was a dying pill, but to him, it was a good pill. As long as he had enough blood crystals, he would be able to break through to the true lake realm and break through to the divine sea realm. "I'll have someone send them to you later," Feng Wujiang said and called out, "Follow me, there's someone who wants to see you." Lu Yi followed behind Feng Wujiang. After a while, Lu Yi met Ouyang Zi in the artifact refining workshop. Feng Wujiang introduced them to each other. After learning that Ouyang Zi was the chief artifact refining master of the Heavenly Secret Commerce Alliance several hundred years ago, Lu Yi was filled with respect. The Heavenly Secret Commerce Alliance was a colossus with many talents under its banner. For Ouyang Zi to become the chief artifact refining master, his artifact refining level was naturally extremely high. It wasn't something that a dabbler like him could compare to. In the end, he had only studied the artifact refining Dao with Kong Kong for 2 months in the Sword Artifact Sex Sealed World. Even if he had some talent in this field, it was impossible for him to have high attainments in artifact refining without years of immersion. Ouyang Zi was even more surprised. mainly because Lu Yi was too young. Yesterday, when he heard Feng Wujiang say that the twin spirit-connected spirit array was refined by his junior brother, Ouyangzi thought that since he was Feng Wujiang's junior brother, he should be in his early 50s. But the young man in front of him was clearly in his early 20s. You refined this thing? Ouyangzi held the array plate in his hand, his eyes still a little red. It seemed that he didn't rest well yesterday. Junior refined it. Lu Yi nodded. Refine another one for me to see. Ouyangzi had a look of disbelief, mainly because he couldn't believe it. At Lu Ye's age, even if he started learning the artifact refining Tao in his mother's womb, it was impossible for him to completely brand such complex spirit inscriptions into an array plate. Lu Yi turned his head to look at Feng Wujiang, who nodded. Junior brother, please refine one. Since eldest senior brother had spoken, Lu Yi naturally wouldn't refuse, taking out some materials from his storage space and condensing his spirit chi into a flame, which he then used to refine them. With his current True Lake Realm 8th Order cultivation, he could already refine some simple artifacts out of thin air, which was how he had refined the previous array plate. Under his control, the impurities were constantly separated and the prototype of an array plate slowly appeared. After a short while, Lu Yi withdrew his spirit chi and a brand new twin spirit-connected spirit array was produced. He handed it to Ouyangzi. Ouyangzi took it and used his spirit chi and divine sense to investigate its interior, a look of disbelief appearing on his face as he muttered, "This doesn't make sense." He had seen Lu Ye's refining technique and felt that it was really immature. In terms of quality, the array plate in his hand was barely passable. How could such artifact refining skills be able to completely brand such complex spirit inscriptions into it? Such an array plate was really a bit shabby on the outside but with a golden interior. It didn't look special from the outside, but all the good stuff was inside. Lu Yi knew why he was surprised, so he explained, "Senior, I am a spirit tattooist. Constructing spirit inscriptions is nothing to me." Even though he said so, Ouyangzi still had a look of amazement on his face. It's really amazing. He had seen spiritual tattooists before, but none of the spiritual tattooists he had seen had such a bizarre ability. "Little friend, can you teach this old man the construction of this spirit inscriptions?" Ouyangzi's attitude was clearly much more polite. Although he could sense the complete structure of the linked chi spirit rune through his spiritual sense and spiritual energy, the difficulty of constructing a spirit rune was different. He wanted to know how Lu Yi constructed this spirit rune and learn a thing or two from it. Perhaps he would be able to gain something. He had studied this array plate for a whole day yesterday, so he naturally knew the magical uses of this array plate. It could be said that this thing was a killing weapon in a large-scale battle and would play an irreplaceable role in the Holy Land's defense against the Blood Race army. He naturally wanted to refine this item himself and let the human cultivators in the Holy Land be equipped with it. No problem. Lu Yi agreed immediately. Then the old man and the young man gathered together and chatted. Lu Yi would occasionally show Ouyangzi the construction of the spirit inscriptions. Feng Wujiang stood at the side and waited silently. Dao Shisan stood beside him like a wooden pillar. A few hours later, Feng Wujiang led Lu Yi out of the crafting workshop, leaving behind Ouyangzi, whose face was full of bitterness and hatred. He realized that Lu Yi constructed the spirit inscriptions as easily as eating and drinking. However, when it was his turn, he kept making mistakes and would often make mistakes. This was how spirit inscriptions were constructed. In order to successfully construct a spirit inscriptions, there couldn't be the slightest mistake in the entire process. Even the slightest mistake in yin and yang would cause the entire spirit inscriptions to collapse. This was also the reason why there were so few spirit tattooists in the 9 provinces. Formation masters, refiners, and even alchemists of UU3 were semi-proficient in the construction of spirit inscriptions. It was convenient for them to set up formations, refine weapons, or refine pills. However, spirit tattoos were a very specific field of expertise, and they would construct the spirit tattoos they used most often. They weren't like spirit tattooists, who could easily construct any type of spirit tattoo. As for Senior Ying, I probably can't count on him. Feng Wujiang also saw some things. In the way of weapon refinement, Ouyangzi was second to none. Even in the current 9 provinces, there weren't many who could compare to him in terms of weapon refinement. However, everyone had their own specialties, and the extremely complicated spirit pattern of the same spirit pattern was undoubtedly an insurmountable hurdle for Ouyangzi. Perhaps in the future, he could slowly practice to increase the success rate of this spirit inscriptions and use it in refining weapons. However, the Holy Land lacked time. Within 2 months, the Blood Race army would invade. It was useless to count on Ouyangzi. Chapter 1035. Junior brother, can you be in charge of refining that formation plate? Feng Wujiang asked. No problem, that's what I was thinking. Okay, I'll get someone to send the materials to you later. Feng Wujiang was overjoyed. Just now, he had seen Lu Yi forge the formation plate effortlessly. He didn't even need to spend much effort to forge one formation plate. In this way, he would be able to forge at least 200 formation plates in a day. There was enough time. Feng Wujiang walked in another direction. Soon, they arrived at a cave at the foot of the holy mountain. There were a few cultivators there. When they saw Feng Wujiang, they all bowed. Holy Master! Feng Wujiang nodded his head and led Lu Yi inside. At first, they went straight ahead, and then they looked at Madanji Wanar. They went deep into the ground and came to a huge place. Inside the cave, there were flickering flames around the cave. It wasn't dark at all. Lu Yi looked around and saw that every gate in the cave had a large water tank-like container placed in front of it. A water tank. There were also round things in the tanks. At first, he didn't see what those round things were, but when he focused his vision, he was slightly shocked. Senior brother, these are Dao soldiers. Feng Wujiang stood beside Lu Yi with his hands behind his back and replied softly. So many? Lu Yi exclaimed. There were nearly 100 water vats in the cave, and the round objects he saw were actually heads. More importantly, there were long and pointed ears on both sides of those heads. These Dao soldiers were clearly not humans, but blood kindred. In the past few decades, the Holy Land and the blood kindred had fought several times. Each time, the blood kindred suffered heavy losses. Naturally, many blood kindred were captured by the Holy Land. The captured blood kindred were all refined into Dao soldiers by Feng Wujiang, which was what Lu Yi saw. He had obtained the refining method of Dao soldiers from somewhere in the 9 states back then. Tai Shan also knew how to refine Dao soldiers from him. If Tai Shan could refine Dao soldiers, he could too. It was just that back then, he felt that things like Dao soldiers were too harmful, so he never refined them. However, he was clearly not a pedantic person who didn't know how to be flexible. Using humans to refine Dao soldiers was harmful, but using blood kindred to refine them was no problem. He had selected many of the blood clan members who had been captured alive over the years with decent aptitudes to refine Dao weapons. However, the casualty rate of refining Dao soldiers was ridiculously high. The birth of a Dao soldier was less than 1 in 100. Over the past few decades, only 100 Dao soldiers had been born. Lu Yi went to the nearest water tank to investigate and found that it was filled with a strange liquid. There was a thick medicinal fragrance, and she had no idea how it had been concocted. A vampire was sitting inside with his eyes closed, and only his head was above the water. His breathing was almost non-existent, but Lu Yi could sense that he was not dead. These are all considered finished Dao soldiers. However, because they are members of the blood clan, although they were successfully refined, they were born with a rebellious nature. Under normal circumstances, there wouldn't be too much of a problem. However, if they were attacked or suffered too much pain, it is very likely that they would betray the blood clan. They cannot be used in battle, so they have been sealed here. Lu Yi immediately reacted, "Senior martial brother wants me to enslave them?" Feng Wujiang nodded. I originally thought that these Dao soldiers would not be of much use, but since junior martial brother has the ability to control people's minds, perhaps I can give them to you. Yesterday, when he heard that Lu Yi had such a method, Feng Wujiang immediately thought of these sealed Dao soldiers. It was a pity that these Dao soldiers could not be used because of some concerns. No problem, Lu Yi agreed readily. However, Junior Martial Brother, are you sure this method will work on these Blood Clan members? You can't be careless about this. Every Dao soldier here has a higher cultivation than you. If they betray their master, it won't be a joke. They are all in the Divine Sea Realm? Lu Yi was shocked. Feng Wujiang nodded. They are all in the Divine Sea Realm. The Blood Clan members he had selected were all very suitable for refining Dao soldiers. They also had secret arts to catalyze and squeeze out their potential. It was not a problem for them to reach the Divine Sea Realm after a few decades. However, the price was that these Dao soldiers' intelligence was damaged, and there was no possibility for them to improve anymore, just like Dao 13. Lu Yi raised his eyes and looked around. Hundreds of Dao soldiers meant hundreds of Divine Sea Realm cultivators. Even if these Dao soldiers were not high in the Divine Sea Realm, a Divine Sea Realm cultivator was still a Divine Sea Realm cultivator. Such a force would definitely be of great help to the Blue Blood Holy Land. That's why I have to be sure that Junior Martial Brothers' method is correct. Absolutely not, Lu Yi promised. Senior Martial Brother may not know, but my method is actually a divine rune. If it is a Divine Sea Realm cultivator with normal intelligence, there may be a chance it will betray their master, but against these Dao soldiers with damaged intelligence, it has absolute control and suppression. Divine rune? Feng Wujiang was surprised. Isn't that? Although he was not a spirit tattoo master, he still knew what a divine rune was. It could only be constructed by one's divine sense. Lu Yi was clearly just a true Lake Realm cultivator. Halfway through his words, Feng Wujiang felt a divine sense spread out from Lu Yi. Junior Martial Brother, you actually have divine sense. Feng Wujiang was really shocked this time. Even he had never seen such a bizarre thing. How could a true Lake Realm cultivator develop divine sense? Even if his Junior Martial Brother was already a true Lake Realm 8th Order cultivator, there was no precedent in this world for a true Lake Realm cultivator to develop a soul body. I once had a chance to obtain a lot of soul cleansing water. After consuming it for a long time, my soul became stronger. Later on, by chance, I developed a soul body and developed divine sense. There was no need to hide too much in front of his eldest senior martial brother. Moreover, his second senior martial sister and Yan Yuxian also knew about this. Moreover, his eldest senior martial brother would be able to sense it when he used some method to enslave these Dao soldiers. Feng Wujiang did not know what to say. He thought that his life experience was bizarre enough, but he did not expect Lu Yi to be even more bizarre. Calming himself down, Feng Wujiang said, "Then let me see Junior Martial Brother's method." Lu Yi smiled and raised his hand to touch the Dao soldier's forehead, urging it with his divine sense. The Dao soldier was in a deep sleep. It was obviously Feng Wujiang's method. It was similar to yesterday when he made Dao 13 lose his ability to move and fall into a deep sleep. Naturally, there was no resistance to Lu Ye's method. In addition, the Dao soldier's intelligence was lacking, so the soul manipulation technique was successfully constructed. After a few breaths of time, Lu Yi withdrew his hand. Feng Wujiang turned to look at him, a look of inquiry on his face. Lu Yi said, "That's enough. Senior martial brother, wake him up." Feng Wujiang walked behind the Dao soldier and pressed his hand to the back of the Dao soldier's head. It was unknown what he did, but as he activated his spiritual power, the sleeping Dao soldier suddenly woke up. In the dim environment, the Dao soldier's eyes were like two rays of blood-red light. He then stood up, his spiritual power surging uncontrollably. The large vat he was in shattered, and the medicinal liquid inside flowed all over the ground. Feng Wujiang watched silently, waiting for the Dao soldier to make any inappropriate movements. He would immediately attack and kill him. However, the Dao soldier only glanced left and right before obediently standing in front of Lu Yi. He lowered his head, looking very respectful. The chaotic spiritual power in his body also slowly calmed down. After confirming that there were no problems with the Dao soldier, Feng Wujiang finally relaxed. Lu Yi had already walked towards the other vat, following the same pattern. Walking down the road, all person all one, a sleeping Dao soldier awoke. From start to finish, it took less than half an hour. Lu Yi had planted the soul-controlling divine soul in all of them. Almost every Dao soldier would be a little confused on the first day they woke up. This was the aftereffect of meditating on the stone blade for a long time. They would instinctively move. Instinctively. In comparison, their cultivations were very clear to Lu Yi. Eldest senior brother was right. These Dao soldiers were all at the soul-stabilizing sea realm, none below the divine sea realm. Their cultivation levels were also very average, basically concentrated between the second order and fourth order divine sea realm. There were very few fifth order, only 5. Dao 13 was also at the fifth order divine sea realm. From this point of view, although this method of refining Dao soldiers was useful, it had too many flaws and the failure rate was extremely high. Failure meant death. This could be seen from the number of Dao soldiers in front of him. Although Lu Yi didn't know how many blood race cultivators Feng Wujiang had captured over the years, standing in front of him, there were only 100 or so. These Dao soldiers will be handed over to junior brother in the future, Feng Wujiang said. Senior brother can rest assured, I will make sure they display their worth. Let's go. The 3 of them came in, but when they left, it was a mighty group. Feng Wujiang still had something to do, so he left first. Lu Yi led a large group of blood race cultivators back to the top of the holy mountain, startling the blue-robed servant, who subconsciously thought that the blood race had invaded. In the room, the blue-robed servant trembled as he walked in. I'm holding a robe in my hand. Yuan, this is what the holy master ordered me to give to you. Lu Yi reached out and took it. Thank you for your hard work. It's no trouble. The blue-robed servant squeezed out a smile and bolted out, disappearing in a puff of smoke. There was no other way. There were hundreds of blood race divine sea realm cultivators standing in front of Lu Ye's door, all of them silent and gloomy, which was a bit scary. In the room, Lu Yi checked the contents of the storage bags. 2 of them were filled with various materials for refining array discs, while the other 2 were filled with blood crystals. Lu Yi poured out one of the bags of blood crystals, which immediately piled up into a small mountain beside him. Looking at these blood crystals, Lu Yi let out a long sigh. Now, he didn't lack the resources to break through to the 9th order true lake realm. Not only were there a lot of blood crystals, but their quality was also good. Lu Yi picked up one of them and felt the surging energy contained in it. He immediately concluded that this was a blood crystal of a blood race cultivator of the divine sea realm. He had never obtained a blood crystal of a blood race cultivator of the divine sea realm. There were many blood race cultivators who died in the islands around the Holy Land, so naturally, there was no lack of divine sea realm cultivators. He directly threw it into his mouth and chewed. It still had the same texture, crunchy but tasteless. Feeling the energy in the blood crystal, Lu Yi was extremely satisfied. He directly jumped up and sat on the hill-like blood crystal, urging the power of his talent tree. Invisible roots stretched out and probed into the blood crystal beside him, devouring it to its heart's content. Chapter 1036. Over the next few days, Lu Yi activated the power of his talent tree to devour blood crystals while refining array discs. Almost every day, there were nearly 200 formation discs being refined. Feng Wujiang would come to him every 2 days to take away the array discs he refined. Even though he stayed in his room all the time, Lu Yi still felt a sense of urgency. He knew that there wasn't much time left for the Holy Land. The blood race's army of over 1 million was definitely on the way, and it wouldn't be long before they reached the city gates. At that time, the Holy Land's survival would be decided in a single day. A month passed in the blink of an eye. During this period of time, Lu Yelu had continuously refined more than 5,000 to 6,000 formation discs, and the number of blood crystals he had devoured was incalculable. He didn't need to continue refining array discs because he already had enough. Now, he could fully immerse himself in his cultivation. Another 10 days passed, and the spiritual energy in his body became even purer. After 9 revolutions of spiritual energy, an invisible wave of air swept out, and Lu Yi slowly opened his eyes. True Lake Realm 9th Order. He was only 1 step away from the Spirit Sea Realm. There wasn't much time left for him to cultivate to the spirit sea realm. Moreover, the war with the blood race was about to begin, so he didn't have the mood to continue cultivating. He didn't get up immediately and instead spent 2 days consolidating his cultivation. Then he walked out of the room and found the blue-clothed attendant who had been staying on the holy mountain. He asked him to find some materials for him. The blue-clothed attendant naturally obeyed. The reason he stayed here was because he received Feng Wujiang's order to satisfy all of Lu Ye's needs. 2 hours later, the blue-clothed attendant brought all the materials Lu Yi needed and Lu Yi began to refine them. The blue-clothed attendant was curious and asked, "Sir, what are you doing?" Lu Yi explained, "For tattooing." "Tattooing?" The blue-clothed attendant was puzzled. "What was that?" "You'll know when you see it." Lu Yi didn't explain and asked casually, "What's the situation of the enemy?" The blue-clothed attendant's expression turned serious. "I heard from the Holy Master that the Blood Race's army has begun to cross the Divine Gate Sea. They will attack us in 6 or 7 days. Lu Yi nodded. There was still enough time. Half a day later, all the materials were mixed. Lu Yi waved at Dao 13, who was standing at the side, and Dao 13 walked over obediently. "Take off your shirt and lie down." Lu Yi pointed at the wooden bed in front of him. Dao 13 did as he was told. When everything was ready, Lu Yi took out the set of needles given to him by his master and began to inscribe spirit marks on Dao Shisan's body. Naturally, it was the twin chi-connected branch spirit tattoo. Although he already had the kindred chi connection array disk, he only needed to be within the range of the array disk's power to connect with his companion's auras and easily form an array. However, there was a drawback to this, and that was that the disk array could be seized by the enemy and used by the enemy. Moreover, in the midst of a great battle, once the formation plate was shattered, the formation would collapse without the need to attack. After all, the formation plate itself was not something particularly sturdy. However, it was a different story if it was tattooed. There was absolutely no possibility of it being seized or broken unless the owner died. Lu Yi planned to inscribe the twin chi-connected branch spirit tattoo on Dao Shisan and his blood slaves. This way, they could replace the formation plate. It could also be said that each of them was a formation plate that could connect with other people's auras at will. It could even be said that if these soul slaves were scattered among the human cultivators, they could also replace the formation plate. At a critical moment, they might be able to play a miraculous role. It had been a long time since Lu Yi studied the Tao of Inscription. The last time he studied it was when he was in the spiritual land of Huitian Valley in the Cloud River battlefield. Ever since he embarked on the path of cultivation, with the Tao of Inscription as his foundation, he had come into contact with too many outer Tao, such as the Tao of Formation, the Tao of Inscription, the Tao of Refining, and so on. He might come into contact with more in the future, but a person's energy was limited. Naturally, it was impossible for him to be proficient in everything. The only result of being proficient in everything was that he was proficient in everything. Cultivation was what he needed to do the most. Perhaps one day, when his cultivation base could no longer improve, he would study more outer Tao. However, that was not the case now. Although his attainment in the Tao of Inscription was sloppy, it was not too difficult for him to inscribe thanks to the talent tree. Otherwise, he would not have chosen Dao Shisan as his first target. The servant in green stood at the side and watched as Lu Ye's hand danced in the air. The Tao of Inscription gradually formed a complicated inscription diagram on Dao Shisan's chest. He could not help but gasp in amazement. Not long after, Dao Shisan stood up and put on his clothes again. Lu Yi summoned another Blood Clan soul slave and did the same thing. Not all the Blood Clan soul slaves were inscribed on their chests. Some of them were female, so they could only choose to inscribe on their backs. The uneven chests would also affect the performance of his Tao of Inscription. It took Lu Yi 2 days to inscribe all the Blood Clan soul slaves. Then he began to train them. The so-called training was nothing more than letting them familiarize themselves with the evolution of the formation. Lu Yi had long since obtained many practice methods of formations from his eldest senior brother in preparation for today. There was the black tortoise moon-gazing formation that leaned towards defense, the the White Tiger Heaven-smashing formation that leaned towards killing, and the Azure Dragon's Seven Mansions formation that was unpredictable. The names of these formations sounded very powerful. It seemed that the effects would not be too bad in a real battle. Moreover, depending on the number of people, the formation would be different. If there were only 2 people, they could form the 2 dragons emerging from the water formation. Above that, there was the Heaven and Earth tripartite formation, the level 4 Tusita formation, and the 9 palace chain formation with 9 people. The 9 states Tianji had sent many people to the blood refinement realm over the past few hundred years. Each of them was knowledgeable and experienced. These formations were provided by the old seniors and included at least 1,000 years' worth of essence in the 9 states. Under normal circumstances, it was basically an impossible task to familiarize oneself with the changes of a formation in such a short time, even if the people forming the formation were familiar with each other. Not to mention, Dao Bing, who had a lack of intelligence, would never be able to understand what a formation was. However, with the help of kindred spirit, the Dao soldier's practice was actually quite good. The most difficult thing for a cultivator to form a formation was to connect their qi. Everyone's qi was different. If they wanted to connect their qi, they had to accommodate and fit together, just like the yin and yang in the construction of the inscription diagram. Every spiritual pattern was formed by combining countless yin and yang elements in different ways. Only then could it form a whole. The twin qi shared branch spirit tattoo had perfectly resolved this greatest difficulty, and the rest was naturally easy. After practicing for several days, Lu Yi led a group of Dao Bing and valiantly flew out of the sacred mountain. After asking for the location of the eldest senior brother, Lu Yi rushed there. After a while, he saw the figure of the eldest senior brother on a small island in the periphery. There was a city on the small island, but it was not used for people to live. All the humans in the sacred mountain were gathered on the large island in the center. The small islands in the periphery and even the cities on the islands were just defensive structures. Many human cultivators in the city were busy making the final preparations before the battle. Feng Wujiang stood on the city wall. There were at least 70 to 80 people around him, either sitting or standing. The eldest senior brother was obviously assigning the defense tasks. At this moment, those who were qualified to stand beside him were all top cultivators from the 9 states. After decades of development, although there were many Divine Sea Realm cultivators, their cultivation was not too high and they were not qualified to attend such an occasion. When Lu Yi arrived, many pairs of eyes immediately looked over. There was no pressure, but Lu Yi still felt the pressure as heavy as a mountain. Looking up, he saw that almost all of these people had snow-white hair and beards. There were few middle-aged people. On the other hand, there were a few female cultivators who maintained themselves like Yuji. They looked youthful and beautiful. Mixed in such a group of people, they really stood out from the crowd. Lu Yi saw Jian Guhong, Wu Chang, Meng Jie, and Granny Jiao in the crowd. When he landed, a large group of Dao Bing also landed behind him. They all had dull expressions and dull eyes. In comparison, Dao 13 was undoubtedly more normal. "Sacred Lord, this is your mysterious junior brother?" a white-haired old man asked. The others looked up and down at Lu Yi with interest. Feng Wujiang laughed and put his arm around Lu Ye's shoulder affectionately. "Yes, this is my junior brother. Seniors, what do you think? The new generation surpasses the old, right?" Lu Yi hurriedly bowed. Lu Yi of the Jade Blood sect of the War State greets the seniors. His attitude was extremely respectful. It couldn't be helped. The people here were all real seniors. Every one of them was a hero in their own era. They were people who stirred up the 9 regions. Regardless of whether they were from the Haotian Alliance or the Myriad Demons Ridge, they were all on the same side. Lu Yi actually liked this kind of atmosphere. Everyone worked together for the same goal, and there was no misunderstanding between them. Unlike in the 9 states, even if they were from the same camp, there were many open and secret struggles. There was no personal enmity between the Z arts of the different camps. It was just that there was conflict between camps. There was a reason to fight. The white-haired old man stroked his beard and smiled. There are indeed talents in every generation. Lu Ye's ninth order true lake realm cultivation was among them. The people who don't buy it don't count as 1TA2. Who doesn't know the methods that Lu Yi has shown? Who didn't know? Originally, the Holy Land didn't have much confidence in the blood race's encirclement because the limited information they received showed that the blood race's troops this time were far stronger than before. Moreover, there were many blood race masters hidden in the army, and there must be a lot of saint seeds among them. Obviously, the blood race also knew that as long as they broke through the Holy Land's outer defensive line, they would have a chance to remove this cancer from the Divine Gate C. For this reason, the blood race had put in a lot of effort. This caused the Jade Blood Holy Land's chances of winning to be very low. Before Lu Yi appeared, the seniors of the Holy Land were even divided into two factions. One of them wanted to bring the current human cultivators out of the Divine Gate C and find another place to settle down. However, this was too difficult, so it didn't happen. After all, this was the blood refining world, and the blood race was in charge. Feng Wujiang was lucky to find the Divine Gate C and establish the Jade Blood Holy Land. There was no other Divine Gate C in this world that could provide the Jade Blood Holy Land with such favorable terrain. Chapter 1037. In the end, it was Feng Wujiang who decided to stay behind and guard the Jade Blood Sacred Land. It wasn't that they wanted to live and die with the Jade Blood Sacred Land, but if they ran away without even fighting, it would damage the reputation of these old seniors. Besides, even if the blood race really did have the power to attack the Jade Blood Sacred Land, they still had a good chance of fighting their way out. Just as the Holy Land was preparing for the war, Lu Yi arrived. He brought the Twin Qi Binding Formation Disc, which increased the Sacred Land's overall strength by 30%. Not to mention, he also had the ability to control the sealed blood race Dao soldiers. Lu Yi had been busy these past few days and didn't have much interaction with the outside world. However, the old seniors of the 9 states had been secretly watching him. Now that they were in front of him, they naturally sized him up. Everyone, let's act according to our previous arrangements, Feng Wujiang instructed. The old seniors didn't say anything else. They activated their spiritual power and flew out in all directions. Only Feng Wujiang, Meng Jie, and Yu Ji stayed behind. Senior brother, what do I need to do? Lu Yi asked. Feng Wujiang said, there are 11 islands around the sacred land that form a defensive line. This line of defense cannot be broken, or the sacred land will be lost. Junior brother, I want you to stay on this island and work with Senior Meng Jie and Senior Yu Ji to protect this island. Lu Yi nodded. No problem. After a pause, he asked, what are our chances of winning? Feng Wujiang smiled. Everything depends on effort. We'll know after we fight. He patted Lu Ye's shoulder and flew into the sky. He was probably going to do his final patrol. Lu Yi watched him leave, then turned to Meng Jie and Yu Ji. I'll have to rely on you 2 seniors for this battle. Yu Ji smiled. Meng Jie and I are only 2 people. You'll be the main defensive force in this battle. This is also why your senior brother arranged for you to stay here. But don't be too nervous. If any powerful blood race appears, Meng Jie and I will take care of them. Although the 2 old seniors had high cultivation levels, they were too few in number. Moreover, once powerhouses like them fought, they would definitely be targeted and entangled by the powerhouses of the Blood Clan. When that time came, the main defense force would be the Blood Clan's Dao soldiers under Lu Yi. Over 100 Divine Sea cultivators who could form a formation at any time. No one could underestimate such a force. We have the 60% chance of winning. Yu Ji answered Lu Ye's previous question for Feng Wujiang. But it's war. There are always accidents and changes, so we can't be too sure. We just have to do our best. Currently, the Holy Land only had a 60% chance of winning. One could only imagine how low the Holy Land's chances of winning had been before Lu Ye's arrival. It wasn't that the old seniors weren't powerful enough, it was just that there were too few of them. Although the Jade Blood Holy Land had experienced several decades of development and had an extremely large number of mortals, the number of cultivators they had was still quite small. Take the small island that Lu Yi needed to guard as an example. There were only 10 to 20,000 human cultivators here. The situation on the other islands was not much different. The total number of human cultivators was around 100,000, while the blood race army numbered in the millions. Even if the defending side had the geographical advantage, it would still be difficult to make up for the huge gap in numbers. This was a war with a great disparity in military strength. Yu Ji and Meng Jie were both conserving their strength for the upcoming battle. Lu Yi had Dao Shisan watch over the blood race Dao soldiers while he patrolled the island's defenses alone. One had to admit that the logistics provided by the Kingdom of the Nine States were very good. Fierce and huge offensive weapons could be seen on every section of the city's walls. Each weapon was supported by a formation and had a different number of cultivators overseeing it. Moreover, Lu Yi keenly sensed that there were many formations set up in the city, including the twin Qi linking formation. He had provided the Holy Land with a large number of twin Qi linking formation discs. With these discs, any formation cultivator with a little bit of skill could easily set up a twin Qi linking formation. It could be said that the current city was truly armed to the extreme. Lu Yi felt a bit of pity. If he had enough fire spirit stones, he could provide the Holy Land with another weapon suitable for war. However, he had already used up all the fire spirit stones he had accumulated. The blood refining realm itself didn't produce any spirit stones, so there weren't many fire spirit stones in the Kingdom of the Nine States. It was useless to think about this now. The Holy Land had already done its best. Whether they won or lost the next battle, it was all fate. Lu Yi also began to conserve his energy. He didn't know when it started, but dark clouds covered the sky and surged over at an extremely fast speed. "They're here." Yu Ji's soft voice came from beside him. Lu Yi opened his eyes and looked over. At the end of his vision, dark clouds covered the sky. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled in the clouds. Below the clouds, there was an endless number of figures. They were either flying in the air or riding on spirit weapons. The Blood Clan didn't have much need for offensive spirit weapons. Not many Blood Clan members would use offensive spirit weapons. Their blood techniques were extremely corrosive to the spirituality of spirit weapons. However, this didn't mean that the Blood Clan didn't have flying spirit weapons. The small island that Lu Yi was in charge of guarding was located in the north of the Holy Land. In other words, he was facing the Blood Clan's northern front. It was led by Star Moon Saint. Back then, when hundreds of thousands of Blood Clan members gathered under the Star Moon Holy Land, he didn't feel much. Now that the army was pressing in, the pressure was indescribable. The Blood Clan's northern front crossed the Shunkai Sea and advanced. At the same time, Lu Yi couldn't see the armies advancing from the east, south, and west. There was no cover on the sea. Moreover, it was impossible to cover up such a large-scale march. The Blood Clan didn't need to cover up anything. If it weren't for the Jade Blood Holy Land's battle record of repelling the Blood Clan several times, many people would have lost their minds. Compared to the pressure brought by the Blood Clan's army, Lu Yi was more concerned about another matter. He sensed traces of malice surging from all directions. It was as if a pair of invisible eyes were spying on him, wanting to do something unfavorable to him. The soaring dragon realm's origin in his body was stirring. This was a phenomenon that had never happened before. Lu Yi immediately understood that the invisible malice came from the will of heaven and earth of this world. The will of heaven and earth in this world was muddled and incomplete. It was not as strong and clear as the will of the 9 continents. Previously, Lu Yi could not sense it because the heaven secrets of the 9 continents had concealed it when he was sent here. Moreover, compared to the vast blood-refining world, a true lake-stage cultivator like him was not worthy of the will of heaven and earth's attention. Fairywood's miracle, however, the situation now was different. The Blood Clan's army was pressing in and enveloping the entire blood-refining realm. This made the world's will of this world much clearer. To the Blood Clan, the Jade Blood Holy Land was a malignant tumor. The blood-refining realm was the Blood Clan's world. The world's will of this world was naturally on the Blood Clan's side. However, that was all. Unlike the 9 provinces Tianji, who could directly interfere with the actions of cultivators, the world's will of the blood-refining realm didn't have this ability. It could only instinctively create momentum for the Blood Clan's army and create some psychological pressure on the human race. Just like the dark clouds that came with the Blood Clan's army. The reason why the Soaring Dragon Realm's origin was stirring was because the Blood Realm had destroyed the Soaring Dragon Realm. It was unknown what the relationship between the Blood Realm and the Blood Refining Realm was, but the Blood Clan lived in both realms. The Soaring Dragon Realm's origin naturally had some abnormal reaction to the world's will that seemed to be related to the world's destruction. The Blood Clan's army was pressing in. On the 11 small islands, the human race was waiting in formation. The distance between them was getting closer and closer. From afar, they could hear the earth-shattering battle cries from the Blood Clan's army. The dark clouds that covered the sky also quickly advanced with the Blood Clan's army until they covered the Jade Blood Holy Land and the surrounding islands. There was no longer any light in the sky. The whole world fell into darkness. The atmosphere was so oppressive that it made people feel as if there were more than 10 quilts on their bodies. With a roar, lines quickly lit up, piercing through the oppressive darkness and turning into the brightest light in the world. It was the human cultivators who were responsible for the formation on the city wall that activated the Great Formation. In an instant, an extremely complicated formation enveloped the entire city. In the city, all the human cultivators who were standing in it trembled. They had a strange feeling. They could clearly feel that they could inject their own power into the Great Formation under their feet and let anyone in the city borrow it. At the same time, they could also extract the power injected by others from the Great Formation under their feet. The Twin Chi-connected Great Formation was the first to be activated. 11 small islands and 11 Twin Chi-connected Great Formations lit up like 11 lanterns in the vast Shinkei Sea. Buzzing sounds continued. Following closely behind the Twin Chi-connected Great Formation, sections of the defensive formations on the city wall were activated. Crunching sounds could be heard. Yu Ji and Meng Jie, who were standing beside Lu Yi, turned to look at Lu Yi at the same time. With one glance, the two elders' eyes twitched. Yu Ji couldn't believe her eyes. "What are you eating?" Lu Yi handed over the half-eaten blood crystal to her. "Senior, have some." Even though Yu Ji was experienced and knowledgeable, she couldn't help but be deeply shocked. You're fine eating this? I have a good appetite and digestion." Lu Yi smiled and swallowed the blood crystal. Her spiritual energy surged and continuously injected into the Great Formation under her feet, making it easier for the others in the Great Formation to borrow power. Yu Ji stiffly shifted her gaze away. She didn't intend to persuade her. Although Lu Yi looked old, she was still a true lake-stage cultivator. She didn't need to tell her what she could and couldn't eat. "Monster." The usually taciturn Meng Jie couldn't help but comment. He had been in the blood refinement world for so many years, but he had never seen a human who could eat blood crystals. Was she still human? He couldn't understand what kind of monsters had appeared in the 9 continents. Feng Wujiang might be ridiculously strong, but he was still within the range of a normal person. This junior martial brother of his was obviously abnormal. Suddenly, there was a violent tremor. Following that, a beam of light shot out from the city wall. That beam of light was as straight as a sword and directly blasted into the vampiric army. Everywhere it passed, the vampiric army turned into powder. The war had begun. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.